Hello, and welcome. It's good to have you here, wherever you are, whatever kind of day has brought you to this moment. Tonight, we're going to travel together into one of the quietest miracles the ocean knows. A story written in layers, in darkness, in patience. A story about pearls and the strange, beautiful mathematics of imperfection becoming something luminous. You can let your shoulders settle, if you'd like. There's no hurry here. No place we need to rush toward. Your breathing can slow, and your mind can wander gently alongside these ideas, these small wonders that take years to form in the silent depths. Perhaps you've had a long day. Perhaps your thoughts are still moving quickly, or perhaps they're already beginning to soften at the edges. Either way, you're welcome here. We'll move slowly tonight, through facts that feel almost like lullabies, through science that doesn't demand anything of you but your quiet attention. If these journeys bring you comfort, you're welcome to return anytime. There will always be more to explore, more gentle mysteries waiting in the margins of the natural world. So let's begin with something small. Let's begin with a grain of sand, somewhere beneath the surface of a warm sea, in water that filters the sunlight into soft blues and greens. An oyster rests on the ocean floor. It is not thinking. It is not planning. It is simply alive, doing what oysters do, filtering water, seeking nutrients, existing in the patient rhythm of its own biology. And then something happens. A tiny particle slips past the oyster's defenses. It might be a grain of sand. It might be a fragment of shell. It might be a microscopic parasite. Whatever it is, it doesn't belong. It lodges itself inside the oyster's soft mantle tissue, and in that moment, a process begins that will take years to complete. The oyster cannot remove the intruder. It cannot spit it out or shake it loose. So instead, it does the only thing it can. It begins to cover the irritant, layer by layer, with a substance called nacre. Nacre is the same material that lines the inside of the oyster's shell, the shimmering surface we sometimes call mother of pearl. It is made of aragonite, a crystalline form of calcium carbonate, and conchiolin, an organoprotein that acts as a glue, binding the crystals together. The oyster secretes this nacre slowly, methodically, wrapping the irritant in thin, translucent layers, each one only a few micrometers thick. And this is where the miracle begins. Because what the oyster is doing, without intention, without awareness, is creating one of the most perfectly smooth, most flawlessly round objects in all of nature. It is transforming an accident into geometry. It is turning discomfort into beauty. Each layer of nacre is so thin that thousands of them must accumulate before the pearl reaches even a millimeter in diameter. The process is slow beyond our usual sense of time. A single pearl might take 2 years to form. Some take 5. Some take longer. The oyster does not rest. It does not pause. It simply continues, day after day, night after night, adding one microscopic layer after another, until the irritant is no longer a source of harm, but a hidden core wrapped in iridescence. There is something deeply calming about this. The oyster does not rush. It does not worry whether the pearl will be large enough, round enough, valuable enough. It simply responds to the presence of the irritant with the only response it knows: patience, repetition, the steady accumulation of tiny efforts. And in doing so, it creates something that humans have treasured for thousands of years. Pearls are not like other gems. Diamonds form under immense pressure deep within the Earth's crust, in conditions of heat and violence. Rubies and sapphires crystallize in molten rock. Emeralds grow in veins of mineral-rich stone. But pearls are born in living tissue. They are organic. They are made by an animal, not by geology. They are soft, as gems go, rating only 2.5 to 4.5 on the Mohs hardness scale, which means they can be scratched by a fingernail if you press hard enough. They are fragile. They are temporary. And yet, they have been symbols of purity, wisdom, and wealth in cultures all over the world. The ancient Chinese believed that pearls fell from the sky when dragons fought among the clouds. In ancient Rome, pearls were so highly prized that Julius Caesar passed a law limiting their wear to the ruling classes. In India, pearls were associated with the moon and were thought to bring peace and calm a mind. In Japan, pearls were said to be formed from the tears of mermaids and angels. These are myths, of course, but they point to something true, that pearls have always felt different, somehow more mysterious than other treasures. And perhaps that's because pearls are not extracted from the earth. They are not mined or chiseled or cut. They are grown. They are nurtured by a living creature in the quiet darkness of the sea. And when they are finally harvested, they are already perfect. They need no polishing, no faceting, no human intervention to reveal their beauty. They emerge from the oyster complete. Let's stay with that oyster for a moment. Let's imagine what it's like inside that shell, in the space between the soft body of the mollusk and the hard calcium carbonate walls that protect it. It is dark in there. No light penetrates. The oyster has no eyes in the way we think of eyes, though some species have light-sensitive cells along the edge of their mantle. It has no brain, no central nervous system. It has a heart. Yes, a simple three-chambered heart that pumps colorless blood through its body. It has gills, which it uses not only to breathe, but also to filter food from the water. And it has that mantle, the thin layer of tissue that secretes the shell, and, when needed, the nacre. The mantle is key. It is the organ responsible for building the pearl. Along its surface are specialized cells called epithelial cells, and these cells produce the aragonite crystals and the conchylin proteins that make up nacre. When the irritant becomes lodged in the mantle tissue, these cells migrate to surround it, forming a pearl sac. Inside this sac, the cells begin their work, secreting nacre in concentric layers, each one following the contours of the layer beneath it. The result is a structure of astonishing regularity, a kind of biological architecture that rivals anything humans have ever built. And here's something wonderful. The nacre is not solid. It is not a single continuous material. If you were to look at it under a microscope, you would see that it is made of thousands upon thousands of tiny hexagonal platelets of aragonite, stacked like bricks in a wall, with thin layers of conchylin between them. The platelets are only about half a micrometer thick, half a millionth of a meter. They are arranged in a structure called brick and mortar, where each platelet overlaps with the ones around it, creating a material that is both strong and flexible. This structure is what gives nacre its strength. Even though aragonite is brittle on its own, the layered, overlapping arrangement of the platelets makes nacre about 3,000 times tougher. When a crack tries to spread through the material, it is deflected by the layers, forced to zigzag through the conchylin, losing energy with every turn. This is why shells lined with mother of pearl can withstand the pressures of the deep ocean. This is why pearls, though soft compared to mineral gems, are durable enough to last for centuries. But the structure of nacre does something else too. It creates light, or rather, it plays with light in a way that few other natural materials can. When light strikes the surface of a pearl, some of it reflects off the top layer of nacre, but some of it penetrates deeper, passing through the first layer and reflecting off the layers beneath. Because the layers are so thin, on the order of the wavelength of visible light, the light waves that reflect from different layers interfere with each other. Some waves reinforce each other, becoming brighter. Others cancel each other out. The result is iridescence, a shimmering play of colors that seems to move and shift as you turn the pearl in your hand. This optical effect is called thin film interference, and it's the same phenomenon that creates the colors in soap bubbles and oil slicks. But in a pearl, the effect is subtle, refined. The colors are soft, pinks, greens, blues, silvers, blending into one another in a way that feels almost alive. This quality is called orient in the pearl trade, and it is one of the things that makes a pearl valuable. A pearl with strong orient seems to glow from within, as if it holds its own light. And in a way, it does. The light you see when you look at a pearl is not just reflected from the surface. It is light that has traveled through layers, been split and recombined, been transformed by the architecture of the nacre itself. It is light that has been shaped by biology, by the slow, patient work of an oyster responding to an irritant. It is light that carries within it the history of the pearl's formation. Let's think about time for a moment. In our lives, we are used to things happening quickly. We send messages that arrive in seconds. We cook meals in minutes. We watch stories unfold in hours. But the oyster's sense of time is different. The oyster does not experience urgency. It does not count days or anticipate the future. It exists in a continuous present, responding to its environment in real time, without memory or expectation. And yet, through this timeless process, it creates something that endures. A pearl that takes 3 years to form represents more than 1,000 days of continuous work, more than 24,000 hours, more than 1,000,000 minutes. Each one of those minutes, the oyster is secreting nacre, adding another impossibly thin layer to the growing pearl. The process never stops. The oyster does not sleep in the way we do. It does not take breaks. It simply continues in the darkness, in the silence, building something beautiful out of something unwanted. There's a kind of meditation in this, a kind of lesson, if we want to see it that way. The oyster teaches us that transformation does not require force or speed. It requires consistency. It requires the willingness to respond again and again in the same patient way, even when the results are not yet visible. The oyster does not see the pearl it is making. It does not know that what it is creating will be valued by humans, worn as jewelry, passed down through generations. It only knows the irritant and the response, and that is enough. Now, not all pearls are the same. The oyster we've been imagining is just one kind of mollusk among many that can produce pearls. In fact, almost any shelled mollusk, oysters, mussels, clams, even some snails, can theoretically produce a pearl if the right conditions are met. But the pearls that are most prized, the ones that appear in jewelry and museums, come from a specific group of oysters and mussels that produce nacre of exceptional quality. The most famous of these are the saltwater oysters of the genus Pinctada, which produce what are known as oriental pearls, or Akoya pearls. These oysters live in warm, shallow seas, primarily in the waters around Japan, China, and Australia. The pearls they produce are typically small, between 6 and 8 millimeters in diameter, but they are known for their perfect roundness and their brilliant luster. Akoya pearls are the classic pearls, the ones you might picture when you think of a strand of pearls around someone's neck. Then there are the South Sea pearls, produced by the oyster Pinctada maxima, which lives in the waters of Australia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. These are the largest of the saltwater pearls, sometimes reaching 15 millimeters or more in diameter. They take longer to form, often 2 to 4 years, and they are known for their soft, satiny luster and their colors, which range from white to silver to deep gold. In the waters of French Polynesia, the black-lipped oyster, Pinctada margaritifera, produces Tahitian pearls. These are the only naturally dark pearls, and their colors are extraordinary. Deep blacks, grays, greens, blues, even purples. The dark color comes from the color of the oyster's mantle tissue, which is reflected in the nacre it produces. Tahitian pearls are large, often 10 to 15 millimeters, and they have a mysterious, almost otherworldly beauty. And then there are freshwater pearls, produced not by oysters but by freshwater mussels, primarily in China. Freshwater pearls are different in several ways. They are usually irregular in shape, more baroque than round, though modern culturing techniques have improved their roundness. They are also produced in greater quantities, sometimes dozens from a single mussel, because freshwater mussels have a larger mantle area. Freshwater pearls are less expensive than saltwater pearls, but they can be just as beautiful, with a soft, subtle luster and a wide range of colors. Each type of pearl carries within it the signature of the water in which it was formed. The temperature of the water, its salinity, the minerals dissolved in it, the plankton the oyster feeds on, all of these factors influence the composition of the nacre and, therefore, the appearance of the pearl. A pearl is a record of its environment, a kind of biological archive written in calcium carbonate. Let's go deeper now into the chemistry of nacre itself. We've said that nacre is made of aragonite and conchylin, but what does that mean at the molecular level? Aragonite is a polymorph of calcium carbonate, which means it has the same chemical formula as calcite, CaCO3, but a different crystal structure. In aragonite, the calcium and carbonate ions are arranged in an orthorhombic lattice, which is denser and more compact than the rhombohedral lattice of calcite. This makes aragonite slightly harder and more stable under pressure, which is why it's the form of calcium carbonate that oysters use to build their shells and pearls. The calcium for the aragonite comes from the water the oyster filters. Seawater contains dissolved calcium ions, which the oyster extracts and concentrates in its mantle tissue. The carbonate comes from the oyster's metabolism. When the oyster respires, it produces carbon dioxide, which reacts with water to form carbonic acid. This acid then dissociates into hydrogen ions and bicarbonate ions, and the bicarbonate can further dissociate into carbonate ions. The oyster's epithelial cells combine the calcium and carbonate ions to form aragonite crystals, which they then arrange into the precise, layered structure of nacre. Conchylin, the organic component of nacre, is a complex mixture of proteins and polysaccharides. It makes up only about 5% of the nacre by weight, but it plays a crucial role. Conchylin acts as a framework, a scaffolding upon which the aragonite crystals are deposited. It also acts as a glue, binding the crystals together and giving the nacre its flexibility. Without conchylin, nacre would be brittle and would shatter easily. With it, nacre becomes a composite material, a biological ceramic that combines the hardness of mineral with the toughness of organic tissue. The exact composition of conchylin varies from species to species, and even from pearl to pearl within the same species. This is one reason why pearls from different oysters can look so different, even when they're formed in the same waters. The proteins in the conchylin can influence the size and shape of the aragonite crystals, the spacing between the layers, and even the way light interacts with the nacre. In a sense, each pearl is unique, a one-of-a-kind creation shaped by the specific biology of the oyster that made it. Now, let's think about the shape of pearls. When we picture a pearl, we usually imagine a perfect sphere. And it's true that round pearls are the most highly valued, because they're the rarest, and because their symmetry appeals to our sense of beauty. But in nature, perfectly round pearls are the exception, not the rule. Most pearls are slightly irregular, with subtle variations in their curvature. Some are oval, some are teardrop-shaped, which are called drop pearls. Some are flat on one side, which happens when the pearl forms attached to the inside of the oyster shell. These are called blister pearls. And then there are the baroque pearls, which are highly irregular, with lumps and ridges and unexpected curves. Baroque pearls form when the pearl sac is not perfectly spherical, or when the oyster's mantle is damaged or diseased, or when the pearl tumbles around inside the oyster, growing unevenly. For a long time, baroque pearls were considered less valuable than round pearls, but in recent years, they've become prized for their uniqueness, their organic shapes, their sense of wildness. The shape of a pearl depends on several factors. If the irritant is round and the pearl sac forms evenly around it, the pearl will tend to be round. If the irritant is irregularly shaped, or if the pearl sac is distorted, the pearl will be irregular. The position of the pearl inside the oyster also matters. If the pearl is free-floating in the mantle tissue, It can rotate as the oyster moves, and the nacre will be deposited evenly on all sides, encouraging a round shape. If the pearl is pressed against the shell, or if it's held in place by the oyster's muscles, it will grow unevenly, resulting in a baroque shape. Interestingly, the oyster has no control over the shape of the pearl. It cannot decide to make a round pearl or a baroque pearl. It can only respond to the irritant, covering it with nacre according to the dictates of its biology. The shape that emerges is the result of chance, of the random interplay of factors that the oyster cannot predict or control. In this way, every pearl is a kind of accident, a beautiful accident, but an accident nonetheless. And yet, within that accident, there is order. There is the order of the aragonite crystals, arranged in their hexagonal platelets. There is the order of the layers, each one following the contour of the one beneath. There is the order of the chemistry, the precise combination of calcium and carbonate and protein. The pearl is a paradox, a random event that produces a highly ordered structure. It is chaos and pattern intertwined. Let's consider the colors of pearls now. We've mentioned that pearls come in many colors: white, cream, pink, silver, gold, black, green, blue, purple. Where do these colors come from? Some of the color comes from the pigments in the conchylon, which can range from pale yellow to deep brown to almost black. These pigments are influenced by the oyster's diet, by the trace minerals in the water, and by the oyster's genetics. Different species of oysters produce different pigments, which is why Tahitian pearls are naturally dark while South Sea pearls are naturally light. But much of the color we see in a pearl comes not from pigment, but from structure. Remember the thin film interference we talked about earlier, the way light reflects off multiple layers of nacre and creates iridescence. The specific colors that appear depend on the thickness of the nacre layers and the angle at which the light strikes the pearl. If the layers are spaced just right, they will preferentially reflect certain wavelengths of light, red or green or blue, while allowing others to pass through or cancel out. This is why a single pearl can seem to change color as you turn it, shifting from pink to green to silver, depending on the angle of view. The interplay between pigment and structure is what gives each pearl its unique appearance. A white pearl might have no pigment in its conchylon, so all the color comes from the interference of light in the nacre layers. A golden pearl might have yellow pigment in the conchylon, combined with structural colors that add a warm glow. A Tahitian pearl might have dark pigment that absorbs most of the light, with just a hint of green or purple from the structural interference. The result is a spectrum of colors that feels natural, organic, never garish or artificial. The rhythm of pearl formation moves in a kind of conversation between the living and the mineral, between the soft tissue of the mollusk and the crystalline structures it builds. Each layer of nacre is not simply deposited, but carefully arranged, molecule by molecule, in patterns that reflect both biological intention and environmental circumstance. The oyster does not rush. It cannot rush. The pace of pearl creation is tied to the pace of its own metabolism, to the temperature of the water around it, to the availability of calcium and aragonite in the surrounding sea. In warmer waters, the mollusk's metabolism quickens slightly, and nacre layers may accumulate a bit faster. In cooler waters, everything slows, and the pearl grows with even more deliberation. This means that pearls from tropical seas and pearls from temperate waters carry within them a record of climate, a diary written in calcium carbonate. Scientists can sometimes read these layers like tree rings, tracing the seasons and years that passed while the pearl was forming. The pearl becomes a kind of archive, a small sphere that remembers the ocean. The nacre itself is not a single substance, but a composite, a blend of organic and inorganic materials working together. The aragonite crystals are held in place by conchylon, a protein that acts as both glue and scaffold. This protein is remarkably strong, and it gives nacre a flexibility that pure mineral would lack. When you press on the surface of a pearl, it does not crack easily. The layers slide microscopically against one another, absorbing force and distributing stress. This is why pearls can endure for centuries, passed down through generations, surviving handling and where that would shatter glass or fracture stone. The conchiolin also plays a role in the pearl's color. Though aragonite is naturally white or cream, the proteins can carry pigments derived from the mollusk's diet, from the algae and plankton it filters, from the trace minerals in the water. These pigments are incorporated into the nacre layers, tinting them subtly. A pearl that forms in water rich in certain algae may take on a greenish hue. A pearl from a mollusk that feeds on particular microorganisms may develop pink or golden tones. The color is never painted on. It is built in layer by layer, a consequence of chemistry and biology intertwined. Some pearls display a phenomenon called orient, a soft iridescence that seems to glow from within. This is different from the surface luster. Orient comes from the way light penetrates the translucent nacre layers and reflects back from multiple depths. The light waves interfere with one another, creating subtle shifts in color that change as the pearl is rotated. Not all pearls have strong orient. It depends on the thickness and regularity of the nacre layers, on the transparency of the aragonite, on the precision of the layering process. When orient is present, it gives the pearl a kind of living quality, as though it holds a small amount of captured light. The shape of a pearl is determined by many factors, most of them beyond the mollusk's control. If the irritant is round and smooth, and if it remains relatively stationary within the mantle tissue, the pearl may grow into a near-perfect sphere. But if the irritant is irregular, or if it shifts position, or if it adheres to the shell, the pearl will take on a different form. Baroque pearls are those that grow asymmetrically, developing lobes and curves and unexpected contours. They are no less genuine than round pearls, and in many cultures, they're prized for their uniqueness. Some pearls grow attached to the inner shell of the mollusk rather than free within the tissue. These are called blister pearls, and they form as domed shapes, flat on one side where they adhere to the shell. Blister pearls can be quite large, since they are supported by the shell and do not need to be held entirely by the mantle. When harvested, they are sometimes cut away with a portion of the shell still attached, creating a kind of natural cameo. Other times, the blister is removed and the hollow back is filled with resin or another material, then capped with mother of pearl to create a composite gem called a made pearl. There are also pearls that form in the muscle tissue of the mollusk rather than in the mantle. These are rarer and often have a different texture. The muscle does not produce nacre in the same way, and the resulting pearl may have a porcelain-like surface rather than the typical luster. Such pearls are sometimes called non-nacreous pearls, and they occur in certain species of conch and other gastropods. The queen conch, found in the Caribbean, occasionally produces pearls with a distinctive flame-like pattern on the surface, a result of the way calcium carbonate crystals are arranged in the conch's body. These pearls are highly valued and cannot be cultured, making them entirely dependent on chance. The size of a pearl depends on how long it remains within the mollusk and how efficiently the nacre is deposited. Most pearls are small, just a few millimeters in diameter. A pearl that reaches 10 millimeters is considered large. Pearls larger than 15 millimeters are rare and often command high prices. The largest pearls ever found weigh several kilograms and are irregular in shape, formed over many years in giant clams. These giant pearls are not nacreous and do not have the luster of typical pearls, but they are remarkable for their size and the patience required to create them. The process of nacre deposition is not constant. It can be interrupted by changes in the mollusk's health, by fluctuations in water temperature, by periods of scarce food. When conditions are poor, the mollusk may slow or stop nacre production, focusing its energy on survival. When conditions improve, production resumes. These interruptions can sometimes be seen in the structure of the pearl as subtle bands or irregularities in the layers. They are reminders that the pearl is not a manufactured object, but a biological response, subject to the same uncertainties that affect all living things. Mollusks that produce pearls are found in both saltwater and freshwater environments. Saltwater pearls are typically produced by oysters, while freshwater pearls are produced by mussels. The two types of pearls have different characteristics. Saltwater pearls tend to have thicker nacre and a deeper luster, while freshwater pearls often have softer colors and more varied shapes. Freshwater mussels can produce multiple pearls at once, sometimes dozens within a single shell, while saltwater oysters usually produce only one or two. The geography of pearl formation is tied to the distribution of pearl-producing mollusks, which in turn is shaped by ocean currents, water temperature, and the availability of nutrients. Certain regions of the world have become famous for their pearls. The Persian Gulf has been a source of natural pearls for thousands of years, with pearls harvested from oysters living in shallow, warm waters. The Red Sea, the coasts of India and Sri Lanka, the waters around Japan and China, the islands of French Polynesia, the northern coast of Australia. All of these places have supported pearl fisheries at various points in history. Each region produces pearls with distinct characteristics. Pearls from the Persian Gulf are often small and highly lustrous, with warm cream or pink tones. Pearls from the waters of Japan tend to be round and white, with a cool luster. Pearls from French Polynesia, produced by the black-lipped oyster, are famous for their dark colors, ranging from deep gray to green to peacock blue. Australian pearls, produced by the silver-lipped and gold-lipped oysters, are among the largest in the world and often have a silvery or golden sheen. The color of a pearl is influenced not only by the mollusk biology, but also by the trace elements in the water. Waters rich in copper may contribute to green tones. Waters with higher concentrations of manganese may encourage darker colors. The exact mechanisms are still being studied, but it is clear that the environment leaves its signature on the pearl. This means that pearls are not interchangeable. Each one carries information about where it formed, about the specific conditions of that place and time. The thickness of a nacre layer is one of the most important factors in determining a pearl's quality. Thin nacre can wear away over time, revealing the bead or irritant beneath. Thick nacre, on the other hand, can endure for generations. In natural pearls, the nacre is typically very thick, since the pearl forms entirely from nacre with no artificial nucleus. In cultured pearls, the thickness of the nacre depends on how long the pearl is left in the oyster after the nucleus is implanted. Pearls harvested too early may have beautiful luster, but poor durability. Pearls left to mature for several years develop nacre layers that can last for centuries. The luster of a pearl, that soft glow that seems to come from within, is a direct result of nacre quality. When the aragonite platelets are smooth, thin, and evenly aligned, light reflects cleanly from each layer, creating a mirror-like surface with depth. When the platelets are irregular or poorly aligned, the light scatters, and the luster becomes dull or chalky. High-quality pearls have what is called a sharp luster, meaning that reflections on the surface are clear and distinct. Lower-quality pearls have a softer, more diffuse luster, or in some cases, almost no luster at all. Pearls are also evaluated based on their surface quality. Even the most carefully formed pearl may have small imperfections, tiny bumps, pits, or ridges, resulting from irregularities in nacre deposition. These are natural and expected. Perfectly smooth pearls are rare and highly prized. Most pearls have at least minor surface variations, and these do not necessarily detract from their beauty. In fact, some people prefer pearls with slight imperfections, as they are reminders of the pearl's organic origin. The weight of a pearl is measured in grains or in mom, Traditional units used in the pearl trade. 1 grain is approximately 50 milligrams. Mom is a Japanese unit equal to 3.75 grams, used especially for freshwater pearls sold in bulk. Weight corresponds roughly to size, but 2 pearls of the same diameter can have different weights depending on the density of the nacre and the size of the nucleus. Heavier pearls are generally more valuable, assuming other quality factors are equal. Matching pearls for use in jewelry is a meticulous process. A single strand of pearls may require sorting through thousands of individual pearls to find those that are similar in size, shape, color, and luster. Even then, perfect matches are rare. Most strands show subtle variations, and skilled jewelers arrange the pearls so that these variations are gradual and harmonious. The process can take weeks or even months for a high-quality strand. It is a kind of meditation, a practice of attention and patience that mirrors the slow formation of the pearls themselves. The drilling of pearls is another delicate task. A hole must be made through the pearl for stringing, and this must be done without cracking the nacre or damaging the surface. Traditional pearl drilling was done by hand, using a bow drill with a fine bit. The driller would rotate the drill slowly, applying steady pressure, sometimes taking hours to complete a single hole. Modern drilling uses precision machinery, but the principle remains the same: slow, careful penetration to preserve the pearl's integrity. Pearls are softer than most gemstones. On the Mohs scale of hardness, which ranges from 1 to 10, pearls rank between 2.5 and 4.5, depending on the nacre composition. This means they can be scratched by harder materials, including dust particles that contain quartz. For this reason, pearls require gentle care. They should be stored separately from other jewelry, wiped clean after wearing to remove oils and acids from the skin, and kept away from harsh chemicals and perfumes. Despite their softness, pearls are remarkably resilient when treated with respect. The organic nature of pearls means they can change over time. Nacre is sensitive to humidity and temperature. In very dry conditions, pearls can develop small cracks as the conchyolin loses moisture and contracts. In very humid conditions, the conchyolin can absorb moisture and swell slightly. These changes are usually minor, but they remind us that pearls are not inert objects. They remain, in a sense, alive, not in the biological sense, but in their responsiveness to the environment. Pearls have been used as medicine in various cultures. In traditional Chinese medicine, pearl powder is believed to have calming and cooling properties. It is made by grinding pearls into a fine powder and is used in topical preparations for the skin or taken internally as a supplement. The calcium carbonate in pearls is the same compound found in antacids, and it can neutralize stomach acid. Whether pearl powder has benefits beyond this is still debated, but the practice reflects a long-standing belief in the pearl's purity and potency. The symbolic meanings attached to pearls are as varied as the cultures that have treasured them. In ancient Rome, pearls were symbols of wealth and status, worn by the elite as displays of power. In early Christian tradition, pearls represented purity and were associated with the Virgin Mary. In Hindu mythology, pearls were believed to be dewdrops that fell from the moon into the sea. In Chinese culture, pearls symbolized wisdom and were thought to protect against fire and dragons. These associations are not scientific, but they reveal the deep human fascination with pearls, the sense that these small spheres hold something precious and mysterious. The trade in natural pearls was once one of the most lucrative industries in the world. Before the advent of cultured pearls, divers would descend into the sea, sometimes to great depths, to harvest oysters in the hope of finding pearls. The work was dangerous and exhausting. Divers held their breath for minutes at a time, descending without equipment, collecting oysters and bringing them to the surface. Many oysters contained no pearls at all. The odds were poor, but the rewards, when a fine pearl was found, could be extraordinary. Pearl diving was practiced in the Persian Gulf for over 4,000 years. Divers, mostly men, would work during the summer months when the water was warmest. They used nose clips made of wood or bone, and they carried weighted stones to help them descend quickly. Once on the seabed, they would gather as many oysters as they could hold, then release the weight and swim back to the surface. A good diver might make dozens of dives in a single day. The oysters were brought aboard boats, left to die, and then opened to check for pearls. The vast majority yielded nothing. The pearl diving season was a communal effort, involving entire coastal communities. Boats would set out in fleets, and the work was organized according to traditional roles and hierarchies. The divers were supported by pullers, who hauled them back to the surface, and by boat captains, who navigated to the best oyster beds. The pearls, once collected, were sold to merchants who would transport them to markets in India, Europe, and beyond. The trade supported economies and shaped the history of the Gulf region. In Japan, pearl diving was traditionally done by women, known as AMA. These divers would work in shallow coastal waters, collecting oysters, abalone, and seaweed. The AMA dove without breathing apparatus, relying on breath-hold techniques passed down through generations. They wore simple white clothing and used weighted belts to aid their descent. The practice continues in some regions today, though it is far less common than it once was. The AMA are celebrated in Japanese culture as symbols of endurance and skill. The introduction of cultured pearls in the early 20th century transformed the pearl industry. Suddenly, pearls could be produced reliably and in large quantities. The price of pearls dropped, and they became accessible to a much wider population. Natural pearl fisheries declined sharply, unable to compete with the efficiency of pearl farms. Today, the vast majority of pearls on the market are cultured. Natural pearls are rare and expensive, often found only in antique jewelry or specialty auctions. Culturing pearls requires knowledge of marine biology, careful management of environmental conditions, and patience. Pearl farms are typically located in protected bays or lagoons where water quality can be controlled. Oysters are raised in suspended cages or nets, allowing water to flow freely around them while protecting them from predators. The oysters are monitored regularly, checked for health, and sometimes moved to different locations as conditions change. The process is labor-intensive and requires years of commitment before a harvest can take place. The success rate of pearl culturing is not guaranteed. Even with skilled technicians and ideal conditions, not every oyster will produce a pearl. Some oysters reject the implanted nucleus, expelling it before nacre can form. Others may die from the stress of the procedure or from disease. Environmental factors such as water temperature, salinity, and plankton availability all affect the outcome. A successful pearl farm must balance all of these variables, adapting to the rhythms of the ocean and the needs of the oysters. Different species of oysters produce different types of pearls, and pearl farmers choose their oysters based on the desired result. The Ikoya oyster, native to Japan, produces small, round pearls with high luster, typically white or cream with rose overtones. The silver-lipped and gold-lipped oysters of Australia and Indonesia produce large South Sea pearls, often 10 millimeters or more in diameter, with colors ranging from white to deep gold. The black-lipped oyster of French Polynesia produces Tahitian pearls, famous for their dark, exotic colors. Freshwater mussels, farmed primarily in China, produce a wide variety of shapes and colors, often at lower cost than saltwater pearls. The time required to grow a cultured pearl varies by species and desired quality. Ikoya pearls are typically harvested after 1 to 2 years. South Sea pearls may be left for 2 to 4 years to develop thick nacre and large size. Tahitian pearls also require 2 to 3 years. Freshwater pearls can be harvested in as little as 6 months, though longer growth periods yield better quality. The longer the pearl remains in the oyster, the thicker the nacre and the deeper the luster. Pearl farms must also contend with environmental challenges. Pollution, rising water temperatures, and ocean acidification all threaten the health of oysters. In some regions, pearl farms have been devastated by disease outbreaks or harmful algal blooms. Climate change is making conditions less predictable, and farmers are having to adapt by selecting more resilient oyster strains, improving water quality management, and sometimes relocating farms to more stable environments. The future of pearl farming is tied to the health of the oceans, a reminder that even cultured pearls are products of nature. Harvesting pearls is a moment of revelation. After years of care, the oysters are brought up from the water, opened, and examined. Each oyster is a small mystery. Some contain beautiful, lustrous pearls. Others contain malformed or low-quality pearls. Some contain nothing at all. The pearls are cleaned, sorted, and graded. The best are set aside for jewelry. Lesser pearls may be used in lower-grade strands or ground into powder for cosmetics. The oysters, once harvested, are usually processed for meat or shell. In some farms, oysters that survive the harvest are nucleated again and returned to the water for a second cycle. The grading of pearls is both an art and a science. Experts evaluate pearls based on size, shape, color, luster, surface quality, and nacre thickness. Grading standards vary by region and by type of pearl, but the principles are consistent. Round pearls are more valuable than off-round or baroque pearls. All else being equal, pearls with high luster and clean surfaces command higher prices. Rare colors, such as deep gold or peacock green, are prized. Matching pearls for a strand adds additional value, as it requires time and skill. Pearls are measured in millimeters, and even a difference of 1 millimeter can significantly affect the price. An 8 millimeter Akoya pearl might be relatively affordable, while a 9 millimeter pearl of the same quality could cost twice as much. This is because larger pearls are rarer and require longer growth periods. The relationship between size and price is not linear. It accelerates as size increases. A 15 millimeter South Sea pearl can be worth many times more than a 10 millimeter pearl, even though the difference in diameter is just 5 millimeters. The market for pearls is global, with major trading centers in Japan, Hong Kong, China, and the United States. Auctions and trade shows bring together farmers, dealers, designers, and collectors. Prices fluctuate based on supply, demand, fashion trends, and economic conditions. Pearls that were highly fashionable in one era may fall out of favor in another, only to be rediscovered later. The market is also influenced by the availability of new pearl types and by innovations in culturing techniques. Pearls have been imitated for centuries. Glass beads coated with fish scale essence, a substance derived from fish scales, were used to create fake pearls as early as the 17th century. These imitations, sometimes called Roman pearls, had a superficial resemblance to real pearls but lacked their depth and luster. Modern imitation pearls are made from glass, plastic, or shell beads coated with layers of lacquer or resin mixed with reflective particles. Some are quite convincing at a glance, but they can be distinguished from real pearls by their weight, surface texture, and the way they feel against the teeth. A traditional test, though not recommended for fine pearls. The tooth test exploits the difference in surface texture between real and fake pearls. Real pearls, because they are made of layered nacre, have a slightly gritty texture when rubbed gently against the teeth. Fake pearls, with their smooth coatings, feel slick. This test is not foolproof, and it can potentially damage a pearl surface, so it is best used only when other methods are unavailable. More reliable methods include examining the pearl under magnification, checking for drill holes that reveal layers, and using specialized equipment to measure luster and surface characteristics. The microscopic architecture of Nacre holds within it a principle that engineers and material scientists have studied for decades, trying to understand how something so delicate can also be so resilient. Each aragonite platelet in the Nacre structure measures only about half a micron in thickness, thinner than a red blood cell. Yet these platelets are arranged in a brick-and-mortar configuration that distributes stress across the entire surface. When force is applied to Nacre, the organic matrix between the platelets allows them to slide microscopically, absorbing energy that would otherwise cause the material to shatter. This sliding mechanism, combined with the waviness of the platelet surfaces, creates a toughness that is roughly 3,000 times greater than the aragonite mineral alone would possess. The pearl teaches us that strength does not always come from hardness, but sometimes from flexibility, from the ability to yield without breaking. The color of a pearl, as we have touched upon, arises from interference patterns created by light waves bouncing between those thin layers of nacre. But the specific hues that emerge depend on the thickness of each layer, the spacing between them, and the angle at which light enters and exits the pearl surface. A pearl that appears pink when viewed from one direction may shift toward cream or white when rotated, because the path length of light through the nacre changes with perspective. This optical phenomenon, known as iridescence, is the same principle that gives butterfly wings their shimmering colors and makes oil slicks glow with rainbow hues. In pearls, the effect is subtle and soft, never garish, because the nacre layers are so uniform and the refractive index differences are gentle. The pearl does not shout its beauty, it whispers it, and only to those who take the time to look closely. Beyond the visible spectrum, pearls interact with light in ways that are invisible to the human eye, but measurable with sensitive instruments. Ultraviolet light, for instance, can cause some pearls to fluoresce, emitting a faint glow in shades of blue, green, or yellow. This fluorescence is caused by trace organic compounds within the nacre, remnants of the proteins and polysaccharides that the oyster used to construct the pearl. Natural pearls and cultured pearls often fluoresce differently, and gemologists use this property as one of many tools to distinguish between them. A natural pearl, formed entirely by the oyster without human intervention, typically shows a more diffuse, even fluorescence, while a cultured pearl may display a brighter glow concentrated near the bead nucleus. These differences are subtle, requiring expertise and equipment to detect, but they remind us that even in the quietest objects, there are hidden stories written in wavelengths we cannot see. The weight of a pearl is traditionally measured in grains, an ancient unit that dates back to the use of cereal grains as reference weights in early trade. 1 grain equals about 65 milligrams, and a single pearl might weigh anywhere from a fraction of a grain to several hundred grains, depending on its size. The famous pearl of Lao Tzu, also known as the Pearl of Allah, weighed over 14 pounds, making it the largest known pearl in the world. Though its irregular, non-nacreous surface means it lacks the luster we typically associate with pearls. Most gem-quality pearls are far smaller, with the average cultured Akoya pearl weighing between 2 and 7 grains. This modest size is part of their charm. A pearl does not need to be enormous to be valuable. Its worth lies in its surface quality, its luster, its symmetry, and the depth of light that seems to glow from within. Pearls are also surprisingly dense for organic gems. The combination of aragonite crystals and organic matrix gives nacre a specific gravity of about 2.7, which means a pearl is nearly 3 times denser than water. This density is what allows pearls to sink gracefully when dropped in a liquid, and it contributes to the satisfying weight a strand of pearls has when held in the hand. That weight is part of the sensory experience of pearls, a quiet reminder that these are not hollow baubles but solid, substantial objects, built layer by patient layer over years. The temperature of the water in which an oyster lives affects not only the speed of nacre deposition, but also the crystalline structure of the aragonite itself. In warmer waters, nacre tends to form more quickly, but the crystals may be slightly less ordered, resulting in a softer luster. In cooler waters, nacre grows more slowly, but the crystals align more precisely, producing a sharper, more reflective surface. This is one reason why pearls from colder Japanese waters, such as Akoya pearls, are prized for their mirror-like luster, while pearls from warmer tropical waters, such as South Sea or Tahitian pearls, are valued for their size and depth of color. Each environment leaves its signature in the pearl, a record of temperature, salinity, and the oyster's metabolic rhythm. Salinity, the concentration of dissolved salts in seawater, also plays a role in pearl formation. Oysters are sensitive to changes in salinity, and sudden fluctuations can stress the animal, sometimes causing it to slow or halt nacre production. In estuaries, where freshwater rivers meet the sea, salinity can vary widely with tides and rainfall, creating challenging conditions for pearl oysters. This is one reason why most marine pearl farms are located in stable coastal waters, away from river mouths, where salinity remains relatively constant. Freshwater mussels, by contrast, thrive in rivers and lakes where salinity is near zero, and they produce pearls with a different texture and appearance, often softer in luster, but rich in pastel colors. The pH of the water, a measure of its acidity or alkalinity, influences the availability of calcium carbonate, the raw material for nacre. Seawater is naturally slightly alkaline, with a pH around 8.1, which helps calcium carbonate remain dissolved and accessible to shell-building organisms. As the ocean absorbs more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, however, seawater becomes more acidic, a process known as ocean acidification. This shift makes it harder for oysters and other mollusks to extract calcium carbonate from the water, potentially slowing shell and pearl growth. Pearl farmers are beginning to see the effects of acidification in some regions, with oysters producing thinner shells and pearls with less robust nacre layers. The pearl, in this way, becomes a quiet indicator of environmental change, a small, luminous witness to the chemistry of the ocean. Oysters also require a steady supply of dissolved oxygen in the water to maintain their metabolic processes, including nacre secretion. In well-oxygenated waters, oysters are active and healthy, filtering large volumes of water and depositing nacre at a consistent rate. In oxygen-poor waters, such as those affected by algal blooms or pollution, oysters become stressed, and pearl quality can suffer. Some pearl farms monitor oxygen levels continuously, using sensors and aerators to ensure optimal conditions. The health of the oyster and the beauty of the pearl are inseparably linked, each reflecting the quality of the environment. Light itself, though oysters have no eyes in the conventional sense, may influence pearl formation in subtle ways. Oysters possess light-sensitive cells scattered across their mantle tissue, allowing them to detect changes in brightness and shadow. These cells help the oyster respond to the day-night cycle and to the presence of predators or other disturbances. Some researchers have speculated that light exposure might affect the oyster's metabolism and, by extension, the rate and quality of nacre deposition, though this remains an area of ongoing study. What is certain is that oysters are far from passive creatures. They are constantly sensing and responding to their environment, and every pearl is a product of that continuous dialogue between organism and world. The age of an oyster when it begins producing a pearl can influence the pearl's characteristics. Younger oysters, with faster metabolisms, may deposit nacre more quickly, but the layers may be less uniform. Older oysters, with slower, steadier metabolisms, often produce pearls with finer, more consistent nacre and deeper luster. In cultured pearl farming, oysters are typically nucleated when they are between 2 and 3 years old, a stage when they are mature enough to handle the procedure but still vigorous enough to produce a pearl over the next 1 to 3 years. The timing of nucleation is a delicate balance, requiring knowledge of the oyster's biology and the environmental conditions of the farm. Once a pearl is harvested, the oyster does not necessarily die. In some pearl farming operations, especially those producing freshwater pearls, the same mussel can be nucleated multiple times over its lifetime, producing several pearls in succession. After each harvest, the mussel is allowed to recover, and then a new irritant is inserted. This practice, known as successive nucleation, can extend the productive life of a single mussel to a decade or more. Marine oysters, particularly those used for large South Sea or Tahitian pearls, are sometimes nucleated only once, as the process is more invasive and the oyster's health may decline after producing a single large pearl. The decision of whether to renucleate depends on the species, the size of the pearl, and the goals of the farmer. Pearls, once harvested, are surprisingly durable, but they are not indestructible. The organic matrix within nacre is susceptible to drying out, which can cause the pearl surface to crack or lose its luster over time. This is why pearls should be stored in a humid environment and worn regularly. The natural oils from human skin help keep the nacre supple and lustrous. Perfumes, hairsprays, and cosmetics, however, can damage pearls, as many of these products contain alcohol or acids that dissolve the calcium carbonate or degrade the organic proteins. The traditional advice to put your pearls on last and take them off first reflects an understanding of their delicate chemistry. Cleaning pearls is a gentle process. A soft, damp cloth is usually sufficient to remove dirt and oils. Ultrasonic cleaners and steam, commonly used for harder gemstones, can damage pearls by causing the nacre layers to separate or crack. Even mild detergents should be avoided, as they can strip away the organic matrix. Pearls strung on silk thread should be restrung periodically, as the thread can weaken over time, especially if the pearls are worn often. Knotting between each pearl is a traditional practice that not only prevents the pearls from rubbing against each other, but also ensures that if a strand breaks, only one pearl is lost. The value of a pearl is determined by several factors, often summarized by the term pearl grading. Luster is considered the most important quality, as it reflects the precision and thickness of the nacre layers. A pearl with excellent luster appears almost wet, with sharp, mirror-like reflections on its surface. Surface quality is also critical. Pearls with few blemishes, spots, or irregularities are more valuable. Shape matters, though not always in the way one might expect. Perfectly round pearls are rare and command high prices, but Baroque pearls, with their unique, irregular forms, are prized by designers and collectors for their individuality. Size, color, and the type of pearl, natural versus cultured, saltwater versus freshwater, all contribute to the final assessment. Natural pearls, those formed without human intervention, are exceedingly rare and can command extraordinary prices at auction. In recent years, a single strand of natural pearl sold for millions of dollars, reflecting both their scarcity and their historical significance. Cultured pearls, while more abundant, vary widely in quality and price. A strand of high-quality Akoya pearls might cost several $1,000s, while a strand of freshwater pearls could be purchased for a few hundred. The market for pearls is complex, influenced by fashion trends, cultural preferences, and the availability of different pearl types. The global pearl industry is centered in a handful of regions, each known for a particular type of pearl. Japan remains synonymous with Akoya pearls, though production has declined in recent decades due to environmental challenges and competition from Chinese farms. China is now the world's largest producer of freshwater pearls, with vast farms and lakes and rivers across the country. Australia and Indonesia dominate the production of South Sea pearls, while French Polynesia is the primary source of Tahitian pearls. Each region has developed its own techniques, traditions, and quality standards, contributing to the diversity of pearls available today. Pearl farming is labor-intensive and requires patience. From the moment an oyster is nucleated to the moment a pearl is harvested, farmers must monitor water quality, protect oysters from predators and disease, and maintain the infrastructure of the farm. Typhoons, algal blooms, and temperature fluctuations can all threaten a harvest, and there is no guarantee that every nucleated oyster will produce a gem-quality pearl. Some estimates suggest that only a small percentage of harvested pearls meet the standards for fine jewelry, with the rest used in lower-grade strands or ground into cosmetic powders. The uncertainty and effort involved in pearl farming make each beautiful pearl a small triumph. The environmental impact of pearl farming is a subject of ongoing discussion. On one hand, pearl farms can have positive effects, as oysters filter water and can improve water quality in coastal areas. Healthy oyster populations also provide habitat for other marine species and contribute to the overall biodiversity of the ecosystem. On the other hand, intensive farming can lead to localized pollution from oyster waste, and the introduction of non-native oyster species can disrupt local ecosystems. Responsible pearl farmers work to minimize these impacts, using sustainable practices and participating in environmental monitoring programs. The history of pearls in human culture is as layered as the nacre itself. In ancient Rome, pearls were so highly valued that Julius Caesar passed a law restricting the wearing of pearls to the ruling classes. Cleopatra, according to legend, dissolved a large pearl in vinegar and drank it to demonstrate her wealth, though whether this actually occurred is debated by historians. In India, pearls were associated with the moon and were believed to bring calm and peace to the wearer. Chinese royalty adorned themselves with pearls as symbols of wisdom and purity. And in the Islamic world, pearls were mentioned in the Quran as treasures of paradise. During the Renaissance, European nobility wore pearls as symbols of status and refinement. Portraits from this era often depict women draped in multiple strands of pearls, their pale luster contrasting with rich fabrics and dark backgrounds. Pearls were also sewn into clothing, embroidered onto gowns, and used to decorate religious artifacts. The demand for pearls drove exploration and trade, with European powers seeking new sources in the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, and the waters around Central and South America. The discovery of pearls in the New World was both a boon and a tragedy. Spanish conquistadors found abundant pearl oysters in the coastal waters of Venezuela and Panama, and they forced indigenous peoples to dive for pearls under brutal conditions. Thousands of divers died from exhaustion, drowning, or shark attacks, and the oyster beds were quickly depleted. By the 17th century, many of these once rich pearl fisheries had collapsed, a stark reminder of the consequences of overexploitation. In the waters of the Persian Gulf, pearl diving was a central part of the economy for centuries. Divers, known as gawaz, would descend without any breathing apparatus, relying on lung capacity and skill to reach the oyster beds on the seafloor. They used a nose clip made of wood or bone and weighted themselves with a stone tied to a rope. Once on the bottom, they would gather as many oysters as they could in a single breath, sometimes staying submerged for more than 2 minutes. The work was dangerous and exhausting, and divers often suffered from decompression sickness, ear infections, and injuries from sharp coral or marine animals. The pearls they brought to the surface were sold in markets across the Middle East, Europe, and Asia, fueling a trade network that spanned continents. The introduction of cultured pearls in the early 20th century transformed this ancient industry. Natural pearl diving, once a livelihood for thousands, declined rapidly as cultured pearls flooded the market. Many traditional pearl diving communities in the Persian Gulf, Japan, and elsewhere saw their economies collapse. Today, natural pearl diving is rare, practiced in only a few places and often as much for cultural preservation as for commercial gain. The skills and knowledge of the old divers are kept alive by a small number of practitioners, and there is growing interest in documenting and honoring this vanishing tradition. Cultured pearls, despite their abundance, have not diminished the allure of pearls themselves. If anything, they have made pearls accessible to a wider audience, allowing more people to experience their quiet beauty. The process of culturing a pearl, as we have seen, is not a shortcut or a cheat. It is a collaboration between human ingenuity and natural processes, a way of guiding the oyster's own abilities toward a desired outcome. The oyster still does the work, still secretes the nacre, still builds the pearl layer by microscopic layer. The farmer simply provides the starting point and the conditions for success. The shapes that pearls take are endlessly varied. Round pearls, the classic ideal, are actually quite rare, occurring when the nucleus is perfectly centered and the oyster deposits nacre evenly in all directions. Even slight asymmetries in the nucleus placement or variations in the oyster's mantle activity can result in off-round, oval, or button-shaped pearls. Baroque pearls, with their irregular, organic forms, can resemble anything from teardrops to abstract sculptures. Some Baroque pearls have smooth, flowing surfaces, while others are covered in ridges, bumps, and hollows. These irregularities, far from being flaws, give each Baroque pearl a unique character, and they are often favored by contemporary jewelry designers who value individuality over uniformity. There are also pearls that form in unusual ways, creating rare and highly prized varieties. Mabe pearls, for instance, are blister pearls that form against the inside of the oyster shell rather than within the soft tissue. After the pearl is harvested, the shell is cut away, and the back of the pearl is filled with resin and capped with mother of pearl, creating a dome-shaped gem. Keishi pearls are small, non-nucleated pearls that form accidentally during the culturing process, often as a byproduct when the oyster rejects the nucleus or when nacre forms around a piece of mantle tissue. Keishi pearls are entirely nacre, with no bead core, and they often have intense luster and irregular shapes. Soufflé pearls are a more recent innovation, created by inserting a mud nucleus that the oyster coats with nacre. After a year or so, the pearl is harvested, cleaned, and the mud is removed, leaving a hollow nacre shell. This shell is then filled with resin and sealed, creating a large, lightweight pearl. Soufflé pearls allow for dramatic, oversized designs without the weight of a solid pearl, and they have become popular in fashion jewelry. The range of colors that pearls can display is another source of their fascination. White and cream are the most traditional and widely recognized, but pearls can also be found in shades of pink, peach, gold, silver, green, blue, purple, and black. These colors arise from a combination of factors: the species of oyster, the composition of the water, the presence of trace elements, and the structure of the nacre itself. Tahitian pearls, for example, are famous for their dark, metallic hues, which range from charcoal gray to deep green to peacock blue. These colors are produced by the black-lipped oyster, Pinctada margaritifera, which incorporates pigments into the nacre as it grows. Golden South Sea pearls, produced by the gold-lipped oyster, Pinctada maxima, are prized for their warm, buttery tones, which can range from pale champagne to deep, saturated gold. The exact shade depends on the oyster's genetics and the environment, and certain color tones are more highly valued than others. Akoya pearls, typically white or cream with pink or silver overtones, owe their classic appearance to the specific nacre structure and the pigments present in the Japanese Akoya oyster. Freshwater pearls offer perhaps the widest range of colors, including white, pink, lavender, peach, and even metallic shades. This diversity is partly due to the variety of freshwater mussel species used in farming and partly due to the flexibility of the culture and process, which allows farmers to experiment with different tissue grafts and environmental conditions. Some freshwater pearls are also treated after harvest to enhance or change their color, a practice that is disclosed in the industry and accepted as long as it is done transparently. Color treatments for pearls have a long history. Dyeing, irradiation, and coating are all methods used to alter or enhance a pearl's color. Black pearls, for instance, are sometimes created by treating white or cream pearls with silver salts and then exposing them to light or heat, which causes a dark coating to form on the surface. These treated pearls can be difficult to distinguish from natural black pearls without specialized equipment, and gemologists use a variety of tests, including microscopy and spectroscopy, to identify treatments. The ethics of color treatment are debated, with some arguing that it allows for greater creativity and affordability, while others contend that it can mislead consumers if not properly disclosed. The luster of a pearl, that deep, glowing quality that seems to come from within, is perhaps its most enchanting feature. Luster is a function of nacre quality, the thickness, uniformity, and transparency of the layers. A pearl with thick, well-ordered nacre reflects light sharply and deeply, creating a sense of dimension and life. A pearl with thin or poorly formed nacre appears chalky or dull, with little depth. Luster cannot be added after the fact. It is entirely a product of the oyster's work and the conditions under which the pearl was formed. This makes luster the truest measure of a pearl's quality, a direct window into the health and skill of the oyster and the care of the farmer. The surface of a pearl, when examined closely, is rarely flawless. Tiny spots, wrinkles, or irregularities are common, and they are accepted as part of the pearl's natural character. In fact, a completely flawless pearl is so rare that its perfection can sometimes raise suspicions of artificial treatment or imitation. Most high-quality pearls have minor surface features that do not detract from their overall beauty and may even add to their uniqueness. The Japanese have a term, wabi-sabi, which refers to the appreciation of imperfection and impermanence, and this aesthetic finds a perfect expression in pearls, where slight irregularities are seen as marks of authenticity and natural origin. Pearls have also played a role in medicine and folklore. In traditional Chinese medicine, pearl powder, made by grinding pearls into a fine dust, has been used for centuries as a treatment for skin conditions, digestive issues, and to promote overall vitality. While modern science has found little evidence to support these claims, pearl powder remains popular in cosmetics and skincare products, valued for its fine texture and mineral content. In Ayurvedic medicine, pearls are believed to have cooling properties and are used in preparations to balance the body's energies. Whether or not these practices have measurable effects, they reflect a long-standing human belief in the pearl's purity and beneficial qualities. The microscopic world within a pearl reveals patterns that seem almost impossibly deliberate. Each aragonite crystal aligns with its neighbors in what scientists call crystallographic orientation. The C-axes of these tiny hexagonal crystals point perpendicular to the pearl's surface, creating a radial symmetry that extends from the nucleus outward through every layer. This alignment isn't random or accidental. It emerges from the way nacre grows, crystal by crystal, each new formation guided by the template of what came before. The oyster doesn't plan this architecture, yet the result demonstrates a consistency that human manufacturers struggle to replicate, even with advanced technology. The organic matrix between the crystal layers contains more than just conchylin. Scientists have identified a suite of proteins and glycoproteins that regulate crystal growth, control layer thickness, and influence the mechanical properties of the finished nacre. Some of these proteins inhibit crystal growth in certain directions, forcing the aragonite to spread horizontally rather than vertically. Others promote nucleation, encouraging new crystals to form at specific sites. This molecular choreography happens in darkness, in the narrow space between mantle tissue and growing pearl, governed by genetic instructions refined over hundreds of millions of years. The oyster's genome contains the blueprints for this process, passed down through countless generations, each iteration tested by the demands of survival. Pearl formation rate varies not just between species, but between individual oysters, and even between different pearls growing simultaneously in the same animal. One pearl might accumulate nacre at a rate of 3 micrometers per day, while another in the same oyster grows at half that speed. The reasons for this variation remain partially mysterious. Position within the mantle tissue matters, as areas with richer blood supply and more active epithelial cells tend to produce nacre more quickly. The size and composition of the nucleus influences growth rate as well. Smoother nuclei often receive nacre more evenly and quickly than irregular ones. The oyster's overall health, its nutritional state, its reproductive cycle, and even its age all contribute to the pace at which any given pearl develops. Temperature fluctuations leave signatures in pearl structure that scientists can read like tree rings. During warmer months, when the oyster's metabolism accelerates, nacre layers tend to be thicker and may show slightly different crystal orientations. Cooler periods produce thinner layers with subtle compositional shifts. In regions with pronounced seasonal temperature swings, these variations create visible bands within the pearl's cross-section. Researchers studying ancient pearls can sometimes determine the season in which the pearl began forming and count the years of its growth by examining these internal patterns. This technique has revealed pearls that grew for a decade or more, accumulating hundreds of thousands of individual nacre layers, each one a frozen moment in the oyster's long dialogue with its environment. The immune response that initiates pearl formation involves specialized cells called hemocytes that circulate in the oyster's body fluid. When a foreign object penetrates the mantle tissue, hemocytes rush to the site, attempting to isolate and neutralize the intruder. If the object is too large to be expelled or digested, the oyster's body shifts strategies. Epithelial cells from the mantle tissue migrate to surround the irritant, forming what becomes the pearl sac. These cells retain their nacre-secreting function even in this new location, beginning the slow process of encapsulation. The transition from immune response to pearl formation represents a remarkable biological pivot, turning a defensive reaction into a creative act that will continue for years. Different mollusk species create pearls with distinct characteristics that reflect their evolutionary history and ecological niche. Abalone, those flat spiral-shelled creatures that cling to rocks in cold coastal waters, produce pearls with especially dramatic iridescence. Their nacre contains aragonite platelets arranged in a particularly fine stack, creating intense interference colors that shift from blue to green to pink as light moves across the surface. Abalone pearls rarely form perfectly round shapes. Instead, they tend to be baroque, horn-shaped, or button-like, reflecting the asymmetrical interior of the abalone shell. These irregular forms don't diminish their beauty. Many collectors prize abalone pearls precisely for their wild, organic shapes and their almost electricolor play. Conch pearls come from a completely different biological process. The queen conch, a large marine snail found in Caribbean waters, doesn't produce nacre at all. Instead, its pearls consist of fibrous calcium carbonate crystals arranged in a flame-like pattern. This structure creates an optical effect called chatoyancy, a silky sheen that seems to glow from within the pearl. Conch pearls typically appear in shades of pink, salmon, or cream, colors derived from pigments in the conch's diet and tissue. Because conchs cannot be farmed and pearls form in them only rarely, natural conch pearls command extraordinary prices. A single fine specimen might sell for tens of thousands of dollars. The formation process remains poorly understood because the animals are protected in many regions and cannot be studied invasively. Mellow pearls originate in large sea snails found in Southeast Asian waters. Like conch pearls, they lack nacre and instead display a distinctive flame structure visible on their surface. These pearls can grow remarkably large, sometimes exceeding the size of a golf ball. Their colors range from pale orange to deep pumpkin, occasionally showing yellow or brown tones. The mellow snail lives in sandy or muddy bottoms at moderate depths, feeding on other mollusks. Pearl formation in these animals appears to be exceedingly rare, perhaps occurring in less than 1 in several thousand individuals. The resulting pearls, especially those with fine color and clear flame patterns, are treasured by collectors who appreciate their rarity and their connection to a creature most people will never see alive. Freshwater mussels across North America once produced pearls in abundance. Before the rise of cultured pearls, rivers from the Mississippi to the Tennessee yielded natural freshwater pearls that supplied jewelry markets around the world. Pearl hunters would wade into rivers with glass-bottomed buckets, peering through the clear water to spot mussels on the bottom. They'd collect hundreds or thousands of mussels, opening each one to check for pearls. The vast majority contained nothing of value, but occasionally a hunter would find a fine round pearl or a large Baroque specimen that could support a family for months. This industry devastated freshwater mussel populations across the continent. By the mid-20th century, many species had become rare or extinct, victims of overharvesting, pollution, and habitat destruction. The button industry also targeted freshwater mussels, not for their pearls, but for their shells. Thick mussel shells could be cut into buttons, a major manufacturing sector before the invention of plastic. Button factories lined major rivers, processing tons of shells daily. Workers would cut circular blanks from the shells using specialized saws, then drill holes and polish the buttons to a smooth finish. The waste from this process filled rivers with shell fragments and processing chemicals. The combined pressure of pearl hunting and button manufacturing reduced some mussel species to remnant populations. Today, many of these species are protected by law, and the rivers they once dominated in uncountable numbers now hold only scattered survivors. Pearl shape depends on multiple factors operating simultaneously throughout the growth process. The position of the nucleus within the pearl sac influences the final form. A nucleus positioned centrally in the sac, surrounded evenly by epithelial tissue, tends to produce a round pearl. If the nucleus sits closer to one side, or if the pearl sac itself has an irregular shape, the resulting pearl will be asymmetrical. The oyster's movements and the pearl's movements within the sac also matter. Some researchers believe that pearls that move slightly as they grow, rotating gradually over time, develop more spherical shapes because nacre accumulates more evenly on all surfaces. Pearls that remain stationary may develop flat spots or irregular contours. Baroque pearls, those wonderfully irregular specimens, form when conditions favor asymmetric growth. Perhaps the nucleus itself is oddly shaped, or the pearl sac develops an unusual configuration. Sometimes multiple nuclei cluster together, and the oyster coats them as a single unit, creating a pearl with lobes, ridges, or complex curves. Baroque pearls were once considered inferior to round ones, valued less in markets that prize geometric perfection. Contemporary jewelry designers have embraced Baroque pearls for their individuality. No two are alike, and their irregular forms invite creative settings that celebrate organic beauty rather than industrial uniformity. A Baroque pearl might suggest a landscape, a figure, an abstract form, its contours sparking imagination in ways that perfect spheres cannot. Button pearls have one flat side and one rounded side, as if a sphere had been sliced in half. These form when the nucleus settles against the oyster shell rather than floating freely in the mantle tissue. The side facing the shell receives little or no nacre, remaining flat, while the exposed side accumulates layers normally. The result is a pearl with a distinctive profile, useful for certain jewelry designs where the flat back can sit flush against the setting. Button pearls represent a middle ground between the perfect sphere and the Baroque irregular, offering symmetry in one dimension while departing from it in another. Drop-shaped or pear-shaped pearls taper from a rounded top to a narrower bottom, or vice versa. These forms emerge when nacre deposition occurs more rapidly on one end of the nucleus than the other. The mechanisms behind this uneven growth aren't fully understood, but they likely involve variations in blood flow, epithelial cell density, or the pearl sac's internal geometry. Fine drop pearls are prized for earrings and pendants, where their elongated form complements the way jewelry hangs and moves. The most valued drops show smooth, gradual tapers without sudden changes in contour, and their nacre quality matches that of fine round pearls. Circled or ringed pearls display grooves or ridges that encircle their surface, perpendicular to the axis of rotation if the pearl has one. These rings can be subtle, barely visible ripples, or dramatic ridges that divide the pearl into distinct zones. The formation of circles relates to periodic changes in nacre deposition, possibly linked to environmental fluctuations, reproductive cycles, or shifts in the oyster's physiology. Some oyster species produce circled pearls more frequently than others. Tahitian pearls, for example, often show subtle circling, and in some cases, these rings enhance the pearl's character rather than diminishing its value. Extreme circling can reduce a pearl's grade, but moderate circling on an otherwise fine pearl might be overlooked or even appreciated for the texture it provides. Twin pearls occur when two nuclei end up close together in the same pearl sac, and the oyster coats them as a unit. The resulting pearl shows a figure-8 profile, or two lobes joined in a narrow waist. Sometimes the connection is broad, creating a single irregular pearl with a subtle division. Other times, the two halves remain distinct, connected only by a thin bridge of nacre. Twin pearls are relatively rare and often treasured for their novelty. They pose challenges for jewelry setting, but offer opportunities for creative design. Some cultures have attributed special significance to twin pearls, seeing them as symbols of partnership, duality, or balance. The weight of a pearl is measured in grains, mom, or carats, depending on regional tradition and market context. 1 grain equals approximately 0.065 grams, a unit dating back centuries to when actual grains of wheat served as reference weights. The mom, a Japanese unit equal to 3.75 grams, is commonly used in wholesale pearl trading, especially for freshwater and Akoya pearls. Carats, the standard unit for gemstones, are sometimes applied to pearls as well, with 1 carat equaling 0.2 grams. These different systems reflect the diverse cultural histories of pearl trading and the global nature of the modern market. Converting between units requires attention to detail, as errors can significantly affect pricing. Large pearls command premium prices not only because of their rarity, but because size correlates with other quality factors. A large pearl requires years of growth, during which the oyster must remain healthy and the pearl must avoid damage. The longer a pearl grows, the more opportunities exist for something to go wrong: disease, environmental stress, predation, or simple bad luck. A 20mm round pearl with excellent nacre quality and fine luster represents a convergence of favorable circumstances sustained over many years. Such pearls are exceptional, and markets recognize their scarcity with prices that can reach hundreds of thousands of dollars for a single gem. Small pearls, often called seed pearls, have their own aesthetic and historical importance. Measuring just 2 or 3 millimeters in diameter, seed pearls were once laboriously hand-drilled and strung into intricate jewelry. Victorian-era artisans created elaborate designs using hundreds or thousands of seed pearls, embroidering them on a fabric, weaving them into tiaras, or clustering them into floral patterns. The work required extraordinary patience and skill, as the tiny pearls were fragile and difficult to handle. Today, seed pearls are less commonly used in fine jewelry, but antique pieces featuring them are prized by collectors for their craftsmanship and the sheer dedication they represent. The nacre thickness of a cultured pearl directly affects its durability and long-term beauty. Pearls with thin nacre may show wear over time, with the surface becoming dull or even revealing the bead nucleus beneath. High-quality cultured pearls have nacre at least half a millimeter thick, and the finest specimens may have a millimeter or more. Measuring nacre thickness requires specialized equipment, typically X-ray imaging that can visualize the nucleus and the surrounding layers without damaging the pearl. Reputable pearl dealers provide nacre thickness information for valuable pearls, giving buyers confidence that their purchase will maintain its beauty for decades. The color of a pearl's nacre depends on the mollusk species, its diet, the water chemistry, and sometimes trace elements incorporated into the calcium carbonate structure. White pearls get their color from the pure aragonite and the way light scatters within the layered structure. Cream and golden tones arise from organic pigments in the conchyline layers or from the mollusk's tissue. Black pearls aren't truly black, but rather dark gray, charcoal, or greenish black. Their color derived from pigments in the black-lipped oyster's mantle tissue. These pigments, related to melanin, are incorporated into the nacre as it forms, creating a base color that can range from pale silver to deep graphite. Overtone refers to secondary colors that seem to float over the pearl's body color, visible as a subtle tint or sheen. A white pearl might show a pink, silver, or cream overtone. A golden pearl might display green or bronze overtones. These secondary colors result from the interference of light within the nacre layers and the presence of trace pigments. Overtones add depth and complexity to a pearl's appearance, and certain overtones are more valued than others depending on market preferences. In white Akoya pearls, a pink overtone is traditionally prized, while in Tahitian pearls, peacock overtones, a mix of green and purple, are highly sought after. Orient describes a specific type of iridescence seen in the finest pearls, a soft glow that seems to come from deep within the gem. Orient results from exceptionally fine and regular nacre layers that create subtle, complex interference patterns. Not all pearls display orient, and even among high-quality pearls, it varies in intensity. When present, orient adds a luminous quality that enhances the pearl's beauty beyond simple luster. Describing orient in words proves difficult because it's a visual phenomenon that changes with viewing angle and lighting. It might appear as a gentle shimmer of multiple colors, a soft rainbow effect that never quite resolves into distinct hues, a sense that the pearl contains light rather than merely reflecting it. The surface quality of a pearl affects both its appearance and its value. Perfectly clean pearls, with no visible blemishes, are extremely rare and command the highest prices. Most pearls show some surface characteristics: tiny bumps, slight irregularities, faint lines, or small spots. These features result from a natural growth process. A small piece of organic matter might temporarily interrupt nacre deposition, creating a tiny pit. A brief period of stress might cause a thin layer to form differently, leaving a subtle line. Grading systems classify these characteristics by their size, number, and visibility, with categories ranging from flawless to heavily blemished. Some surface characteristics actually confirm a pearl's natural origin. Perfectly smooth, flawless pearls can sometimes raise suspicions of treatment or imitation. A few minor surface features, especially when they show the characteristic texture of nacre, provide reassurance that the pearl formed naturally through the slow accumulation of layers. Experienced dealers and collectors often prefer pearls with minor, well-placed blemishes over suspiciously perfect specimens, valuing authenticity over abstract perfection. Matching pearls for a strand requires patience and expertise. A fine pearl necklace contains dozens of pearls that must harmonize in size, shape, color, luster, and surface quality. The pearls are typically graduated, with the largest at the center and gradually smaller ones toward the clasp. Achieving smooth graduation and consistent quality throughout the strand demands access to a large inventory and a keen eye for subtle differences. A master pearl stringer might spend days or weeks assembling a single exceptional strand, comparing hundreds of pearls to find the perfect combination. The knots between pearls on a traditional strand serve multiple purposes. They prevent the pearls from rubbing against each other, which could damage their nacre over time. They ensure that if the strand breaks, only one pearl will be lost rather than the entire necklace. And they add flexibility and drape, allowing the strand to hang gracefully and move naturally with the wearer. Knotting requires skill, as each knot must be tight, neat, and positioned correctly against the pearl. Silk thread is traditionally used because of its strength and smooth texture, though modern materials like synthetic fibers are sometimes employed for increased durability. Pearl jewelry designs have evolved over centuries, reflecting changing aesthetics and technical capabilities. Ancient designs often featured pearls simply drilled and strung, their natural beauty requiring no elaborate setting. Medieval and Renaissance jewelers began combining pearls with gold and gemstones, creating complex pieces that displayed wealth and craftsmanship. Victorian designers favored delicate work with seed pearls and romantic motifs. Art Nouveau artists incorporated pearls into flowing, organic designs inspired by nature. Art Deco brought geometric precision and bold contrasts, setting lustrous white pearls against black onyx or bright enamel. Contemporary pearl jewelry embraces diversity in form and style. Some designers work with traditional round pearls in classic settings, creating pieces that honor centuries of convention. Others seek out Baroque pearls, unusual colors, or rare varieties, building designs around each pearl's unique character. The rise of cultured pearls made these gems accessible to a broader range of designers and consumers, democratizing what was once an exclusively aristocratic luxury. Today, pearls appear in everything from formal bridal jewelry to casual everyday pieces, from conservative strands to avant-garde sculptural designs. The environmental conditions where oysters live shape not only the pearls they produce, but the oysters themselves. Oysters in warm tropical waters grow quickly, reaching maturity in a few years and producing large pearls relatively rapidly. Those in cooler waters grow more slowly, taking longer to reach harvestable size, but often producing nacre with exceptional luster and fine texture. Water depth affects light exposure, temperature stability, and food availability. Oysters in shallow, sunlit waters experience greater temperature fluctuations and may have access to more abundant plankton. Those in deeper water enjoy more stable conditions, but may grow more slowly due to reduced food supply. Salinity variations influence oyster physiology and pearl formation. Most pearl-producing oysters thrive in full-strength seawater, with salinity around 35 parts per thousand. Some species tolerate brackish water where rivers meet the sea, adapting to fluctuating salt levels. These changes in salinity affect the oyster's metabolism, its shell growth, and the composition of the nacre it produces. Pearls from brackish water oysters may show subtle differences in crystal structure or organic content compared to those from full marine environments. Current and water movement bring fresh supplies of oxygen and plankton while carrying away waste products. Oysters in areas with strong currents must anchor themselves securely to avoid being swept away, but they benefit from the constant flow of resources. Stagnant water, by contrast, can become depleted of oxygen and accumulate waste, stressing the oysters and potentially affecting pearl quality. Pearl farmers carefully select sites with appropriate water movement, seeking locations where currents are strong enough to maintain water quality, but not so strong that they damage the oysters or their infrastructure. The substrate where oysters settle affects their survival and growth. Rocky bottoms provide firm attachment points for oysters that cement themselves in place. Sandy or muddy bottoms suit species that rest on the surface or partially bury themselves. The nature of the bottom also influences predator populations and the overall ecosystem structure. Pearl farmers often modify the bottom environment, placing collectors or cages on structures that elevate the oysters above the substrate, reducing contact with bottom-dwelling predators and improving water flow around the animals. Seasonal cycles bring predictable changes that oysters have adapted to over evolutionary time. Spring often triggers spawning as water temperatures rise and food becomes abundant. Summer brings peak growth as warm temperatures accelerate metabolism. Autumn may see a second spawning event in some regions, followed by slower growth as temperatures decline. Winter brings dormancy or greatly reduced activity in temperate and cold waters, with oysters conserving energy until conditions improve. These seasonal rhythms are reflected in the pearls growing within the oysters, with growth rates and nacre characteristics shifting throughout the year. Storm events can impact oyster populations dramatically. Severe storms may physically damage oyster beds, tearing animals from their substrate or burying them under sediment. Heavy rainfall associated with storms can temporarily reduce salinity in coastal areas, stressing oysters adapted to full-strength seawater. Storms also stir up sediment, reducing water clarity and potentially clogging the oysters' filtering systems. Yet, oyster populations are resilient, and given time, they typically recover from storm damage. Pearl farmers, however, may suffer significant losses if a major storm strikes during critical growth periods. The relationship between oysters and their environment is one of constant exchange. The oyster filters water, extracts what it needs, and returns the water changed. It breathes, feeds, excretes waste, and reproduces, all activities that connect it intimately to the surrounding ecosystem. The pearl growing within the oyster is not separate from this relationship, but part of it. The calcium in the pearl's aragonite came from the water, derived ultimately from rocks weathered over geological time. The organic matrix came from the oyster's metabolism, built from nutrients filtered from plankton that themselves consumed microscopic algae. The pearl is a condensation of ocean processes, a solid archive of the flows and cycles that sustain life in the sea. Human efforts to cultivate pearls represent a partnership with these natural processes. The farmer cannot force an oyster to create a fine pearl, only provide conditions that favor it. The oyster remains the artist, the farmer merely the curator of circumstances. This relationship requires patience, observation, and respect for the oyster's biology and the environment's complexity. Successful pearl farming is not industrial manufacturing, but a form of aquaculture that works with living creatures and natural systems, accepting their rhythms and limitations. The global pearl industry supports hundreds of thousands of people, from farmers and technicians to processors, dealers, designers, and retailers. In regions where pearl farming is established, it often provides crucial income for coastal communities with limited economic alternatives. The work is demanding, requiring knowledge of marine biology, skill in handling delicate animals, and the patience to wait years for results. But for many, it offers a livelihood connected to the ocean and to a tradition of craftsmanship that stretches back generations. Pearl farming also creates incentives for environmental protection. Clean water is essential for healthy oysters and high-quality pearls. Farmers have a direct interest in preventing pollution, maintaining water quality, and preserving the coastal ecosystems that support their operations. In some regions, pearl farmers have become environmental advocates, working to establish marine protected areas, regulate coastal development, and monitor water quality. This alignment of economic interest and environmental stewardship benefits both the industry and the broader ecosystem. Yet pearl farming is not without environmental concerns. High-density farming can strain local ecosystems, as large numbers of oysters filter vast quantities of water and produce concentrated waste. If not properly managed, this can lead to localized depletion of plankton, accumulation of organic waste on the seafloor, and degradation of water quality. Responsible pearl farmers monitor their environmental impact, maintain stocking densities within sustainable limits, and rotate farming areas to allow recovery. The introduction of non-native oyster species for pearl farming has occasionally caused ecological problems. In some cases, introduced oysters have escaped cultivation and established wild populations, competing with native species or altering ecosystem dynamics. Modern pearl farming operations are increasingly aware of these risks and take measures to prevent escapes and monitor for unintended ecological effects. Some regions have developed regulations governing which species can be farmed and under what conditions, seeking to balance economic opportunity with ecological responsibility. Climate change poses emerging challenges for pearl farming. Rising ocean temperatures affect oyster metabolism, growth rates, and susceptibility to disease. Changes in ocean chemistry, particularly acidification caused by increased atmospheric carbon dioxide, threaten the ability of oysters to build shells and produce nacre. Warmer waters also favor the spread of pathogens and parasites that can devastate oyster populations. Pearl farmers are observing these changes and adapting their practices, selecting more resilient oyster strains, adjusting farming locations, and developing techniques to help oysters cope with changing conditions. The resilience that oysters have shown over hundreds of millions of years offers some hope. These animals have survived mass extinctions, dramatic climate shifts, and profound changes in ocean chemistry. Their ability to adapt, to modify their shell building in response to environmental conditions, suggests they may be able to cope with current changes as well, though perhaps not at the pace humans would prefer. Pearl farming, by maintaining genetic diversity in oyster populations and providing protected environments where oysters can thrive, may actually contribute to the long-term survival of these species. The study of pearls and pearl-producing mollusks continues to reveal new insights. Researchers are investigating the genetic basis of nacre production, identifying the specific genes that control the synthesis of shell proteins and the regulation of crystal growth. This work has implications beyond pearl farming, as nacre's remarkable material properties inspire the development of new biomimetic materials. Scientists and engineers study nacre's structure, hoping to create synthetic materials that combine strength and toughness in similar ways, potentially leading to advances in armor, construction materials, and medical implants. The proteins found in nacre have attracted attention for their potential medical applications. Some of these proteins promote bone growth and healing, suggesting they could be used in orthopedic treatments. Others have antimicrobial properties, offering possibilities for wound care or infection prevention. Research in this area is still in early stages, but the possibility that pearls, long valued for their beauty, might also contribute to human health adds another dimension to their significance. The cultural history of pearls is as layered as the nacre itself. In ancient China, pearls symbolized wisdom and spiritual transformation, often associated with dragons and the moon. Chinese texts dating back thousands of years describe pearls as dragon tears or gifts from the sea, objects of power and mystery. Emperors wore robes decorated with pearls, and pearls were placed in the mouths of the deceased, to ensure safe passage to the afterlife. This reverence for pearls reflected their rarity and their association with water, a fundamental element in Chinese cosmology. In India, pearls have been treasured since ancient times, featured in religious texts and royal regalia. Hindu mythology describes pearls as dewdrops that fell from the moon into the sea, where oysters rose to the surface to catch them. Pearls adorned statues of deities, decorated temples, and signified purity and spiritual perfection. The Vedas, ancient Sanskrit texts, mention pearls as symbols of prosperity and protection. Indian rulers accumulated vast pearl collections, and the subcontinent became a major center for pearl trading, with merchants bringing gems from the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, and later from newly discovered sources around the world. In the Islamic world, pearls held special significance as symbols of paradise. The Quran describes the righteous in paradise as adorned with pearls, and Islamic art and literature frequently feature pearls as emblems of divine beauty and perfection. The Persian Gulf produced some of the finest natural pearls in the world, and the pearl trade became central to the economies of coastal regions. Pearl diving was a respected profession, and divers were celebrated for their skill and courage. The pearls they retrieved traveled along trade routes to markets across the Islamic world and beyond, carrying with them stories of the divers' exploits and the treasures of the deep. European fascination with pearls intensified during the Renaissance, when exploration and trade brought new supplies from the Americas. Spanish conquistadors discovered rich pearl beds off the coast of Venezuela, and pearls from the New World flowed into European markets, adorning the nobility and fueling demand for ever more elaborate jewelry. Portraits from this era show royalty draped in pearls, the gems signifying not only wealth, but also purity, power, and divine favor. Pearls were sewn into clothing, woven into hair, and worn in multiple strands that displayed the wearer's status unmistakably. The British crown jewels include numerous historic pearls, some with documented histories spanning centuries. These pearls have passed through royal hands, been reset into new designs, and witnessed coronations, weddings, and state occasions. Each pearl carries not only its own formation history, but also a human history of ownership, display, and meaning. The stories attached to famous pearls often enhance their value beyond their physical qualities, as collectors and museums seek not just beautiful gems, but artifacts with provenance and narrative significance. In Japan, pearls have been part of cultural tradition for millennia, mentioned in ancient chronicles and associated with the Shinto religion. The Ama divers, women who free dive for shellfish and pearls, represent a tradition stretching back at least 2,000 years. These divers work without breathing equipment, descending to depths of 10 or 20 meters, holding their breath for minutes at a time. The practice requires exceptional physical conditioning and intimate knowledge of the sea. While modern pearl farming has reduced the need for natural pearl diving, some Ama continue the tradition, preserving skills and knowledge passed down through generations. The journey through pearls and their formation brings us now to a place of reflection, where all the small pieces we have gathered come together into something whole and luminous. We have moved through layers of nacre and time, through the biology of mollusks and the chemistry of calcium carbonate, through the physics of light and the history of human fascination. And what emerges is not just knowledge of an object, but an understanding of a process that mirrors so much of what we find beautiful in the natural world. Patience, response, transformation, and the creation of something extraordinary from something small and irritating. The pearl reminds us that perfection in nature is not about flawlessness, but about response. The oyster does not reject the grain of sand or the fragment of shell that enters its soft body. It does not expel the parasite or the chip of coral. Instead, it begins a process of accommodation, wrapping the irritant in layer after layer of nacre, transforming discomfort into beauty. This process is not quick. It is not dramatic. It is slow, steady, and repetitive. Each day, the mantle tissue secretes a thin film of calcium carbonate and conchiolin. Each day, the layers accumulate, and over months or years, the irritant disappears beneath a coating of iridescent smoothness. This biological patience has something to teach us. In a world that often values speed and efficiency, the pearl is a testament to the power of gradual change. The oyster does not rush. It cannot rush. The formation of nacre is governed by the metabolic rate of the mollusk, by the availability of calcium in the water, by the temperature and salinity and oxygen levels of the environment. The oyster works within these constraints, building its pearl one microscopic layer at a time. And the result is something that cannot be hurried, something that carries within it the record of every day it took to form. The structure of nacre itself is a marvel of natural engineering. We have seen how the hexagonal platelets of aragonite are stacked in a brick-and-mortar arrangement, with thin layers of organic matrix between them. This structure gives nacre its remarkable combination of hardness and toughness. The aragonite platelets resist compression, while the organic matrix allows for slight flexibility and prevents cracks from propagating. When a crack does form, it is deflected along the interfaces between platelets, dissipating energy and preventing catastrophic failure. This is why nacre is thousands of times tougher than pure aragonite. It is a composite material, and its strength comes from the interaction of its components. Scientists have studied nacre extensively, hoping to replicate its structure in synthetic materials. The challenge is not just in the composition, but in the architecture. The platelets must be precisely aligned, the organic layers must be thin and uniform, and the bonding between layers must be strong but flexible. Researchers have used techniques like layer-by-layer assembly, freeze casting, and 3D printing to create nacre-inspired materials. Some of these synthetic nacres have achieved impressive strength and toughness, though they still fall short of the natural material in some respects. The oyster, working without blueprint or instruction, creates a structure that human engineers struggle to replicate, even with advanced technology. The colors of pearls are another aspect of their beauty that invites contemplation. We have explored how the thickness of a nacre layers determines the wavelengths of light that interfere constructively, producing colors that shift and change as the pearl is rotated. A pearl with layers around 400 nanometers thick will reflect violet and blue light. A pearl with layers around 700 nanometers thick will reflect red and orange light. Most pearls have layer thicknesses somewhere in between, producing the soft whites, creams, and pinks that are most familiar. But the variation is continuous, and pearls can display almost any hue depending on the precise structure of their nacre. Beyond the interference colors, pearls can also contain pigments absorbed from the oyster's diet or environment. Black pearls from Tahiti get their dark color from pigments in the black-lipped oyster's mantle tissue. Golden pearls from the Philippines contain yellow pigments. Pink pearls may contain traces of porphyrins or other organic compounds. These pigments are incorporated into the organic matrix of the nacre, adding a base color that is then overlaid with the iridescent sheen produced by light interference. The result is a complex interplay of absorption and reflection, of chemistry and physics, that gives each pearl its unique appearance. The luster of a pearl, that soft glow that seems to come from within, is also a product of nacre structure. Luster is determined by the quality of the nacre layers, their smoothness, their uniformity, and the sharpness of the interfaces between them. A pearl with high luster has nacre layers that are thin, even, and free of irregularities. Light entering the pearl is reflected cleanly from multiple layers, producing a sharp, bright reflection. A pearl with low luster has nacre layers that are thick, uneven, or poorly formed. Light is scattered rather than reflected cleanly, producing a dull or chalky appearance. Luster is one of the most important factors in determining a pearl's value because it is a direct indicator of nacre quality. The shape of a pearl is determined by the position of the nucleus within the oyster and the evenness of nacre deposition. A perfectly round pearl forms when the nucleus is suspended in the center of the pearl sac and nacre is deposited evenly on all sides. This is relatively rare in natural pearls, but more common in cultured pearls where the nucleus can be carefully positioned. Baroque pearls, with their irregular shapes, form when the nucleus is positioned off-center or when nacre deposition is uneven. Button pearls, flat on one side and rounded on the other, form when the nucleus is positioned against the shell. Drop pearls, elongated and teardrop-shaped, form when the nucleus is positioned in a way that encourages vertical growth. Each shape has its own appeal, and while round pearls are traditionally the most valuable, Baroque pearls are prized for their uniqueness and organic beauty. The size of a pearl depends on the length of time it is allowed to grow and the rate of nacre deposition. In cultured pearls, the size of the nucleus also plays a role, since a larger nucleus provides a larger surface area for nacre deposition. Akoya pearls, typically grown for 1 to 2 years, range from 2 to 11 millimeters in diameter, with most falling between 6 and 8 millimeters. South Sea pearls, grown for 2 to 4 years in larger oysters, can reach 10 to 20 millimeters or more. Tahitian pearls fall somewhere in between, typically ranging from 8 to 16 millimeters. Freshwater pearls, which often have no bead nucleus, can vary widely in size depending on the growing conditions and the length of time they are cultivated. The weight of a pearl is traditionally measured in grains, with 1 grain equal to 0.25 carats or 50 milligrams. This unit dates back to ancient times when pearls were weighed against grains of wheat or barley. A 1-grain pearl is quite small, about 2 millimeters in diameter. A 10-grain pearl is around 6 millimeters. A 50-grain pearl is around 11 millimeters. Very large pearls can weigh hundreds or even thousands of grains. The Pearl of Lao Tzu, a massive Baroque pearl from a giant clam, weighed over 14 pounds, equivalent to more than 127,000 grains. Such giant pearls are extremely rare and are typically not gem quality, but they are impressive demonstrations of the potential scale of pearl formation. The surface quality of a pearl is another important factor in its evaluation. A pearl with a clean surface, free of blemishes, bumps, or irregularities, is more valuable than one with visible flaws. However, completely flawless pearls are rare, and minor surface imperfections are common and often considered acceptable, especially if they are small and not located on the most visible part of the pearl. Some surface characteristics, like subtle ridges or concentric rings, can even add to a pearl's character and uniqueness. The key is that the surface should be smooth and lustrous overall, with any imperfections being minor and unobtrusive. The matching of pearls in a strand is an art that requires patience and a discerning eye. A high-quality pearl necklace consists of pearls that are closely matched in size, shape, color, and luster. Achieving this match requires sorting through thousands of pearls to find a set that works together harmoniously. The pearls must graduate smoothly in size from the center to the clasp, with no abrupt jumps or gaps. The color must be consistent, with no jarring variations in tone or overtone. The luster must be uniform, so that each pearl glows with the same intensity. This level of matching is time-consuming and requires expertise, which is why well-matched pearl strands command premium prices. The drilling of pearls for stringing is a delicate operation that requires precision and care. The hole must be drilled perfectly through the center of the pearl to ensure that it hangs properly when strung. If the hole is off-center, the pearl will tilt or rotate on the string, disrupting the appearance of the strand. The drill bit must be sharp and the drilling must be done slowly to avoid chipping or cracking the nacre. Traditionally, pearls were drilled by hand using a bow drill, a technique that required great skill and patience. Today, most pearls are drilled using electric or ultrasonic drills, which are faster and more precise, but still require careful handling to avoid damage. The stringing of pearls is also an art. High-quality pearl strands are typically strung on silk thread, which is strong, flexible, and gentle on the pearls. The thread is knotted between each pearl to prevent them from rubbing against each other and to ensure that if the strand breaks, only one pearl is lost. The knots also add slight spacing between the pearls, which enhances the drape and movement of the necklace. Stringing a pearl necklace requires patience and dexterity, as each knot must be tied tightly and positioned precisely against the pearl. The thread must be replaced periodically, as it can stretch and weaken over time, especially if the pearls are worn frequently. The care of pearls is straightforward but important. Pearls are organic gems, and they are softer and more vulnerable to damage than most other gemstones. They can be scratched by harder materials, so they should be stored separately from other jewelry, ideally in a soft pouch or lined box. Pearls can be damaged by chemicals, including perfumes, hairsprays, cosmetics, and household cleaners, so they should be put on after applying these products and removed before cleaning or swimming. Pearls can also dry out if stored in very low humidity, causing the nacre to crack or peel. They benefit from being worn regularly, as the moisture from the skin helps keep them hydrated. When pearls need cleaning, they should be wiped gently with a soft, damp cloth and allowed to air dry completely before being stored. The restringing of pearl necklaces is recommended every 1 to 2 years for frequently worn strands, or whenever the thread shows signs of stretching, fraying, or discoloration. Over time, the silk thread absorbs oils, dirt, and moisture, which can weaken it and cause it to break. Restringing not only prevents the loss of pearls, but also gives the necklace a fresh, clean appearance. Many jewelers offer restringing services, and some pearl enthusiasts learn to restring their own necklaces, finding the process meditative and satisfying. The history of pearl jewelry is as long as the history of human adornment. Pearls have been worn as beads, pendants, earrings, brooches, rings, tiaras, and in countless other forms. In ancient times, pearls were often drilled and strung simply, or set in gold or silver bezels. As metalworking techniques advanced, pearls were incorporated into more elaborate designs, often combined with gemstones, enamel, and intricate filigree. During the Renaissance, pearls were sewn onto clothing and used to create elaborate jewelry suites. In the Victorian era, pearls were associated with purity and innocence and were popular for bridal jewelry. In the early 20th century, long pearl ropes became fashionable, epitomized by Coco Chanel's signature style. Today, pearls are worn in both traditional and contemporary designs, appreciated for their timeless elegance and versatility. The symbolism of pearls extends beyond their physical beauty. In many cultures, pearls represent purity, wisdom, and spiritual transformation. The process of pearl formation, with its transformation of an irritant into a thing of beauty, is often seen as a metaphor for personal growth and the development of inner beauty through life's challenges. In Christian symbolism, the pearl represents the kingdom of heaven, as described in the parable of the pearl of great price. In Hindu and Buddhist traditions, pearls are associated with the moon and with the calm, reflective qualities of water. In Chinese culture, pearls symbolize wisdom gained through experience, and the dragon, a symbol of power and good fortune, is often depicted holding or pursuing a pearl. The mythology surrounding pearls is rich and varied. In ancient Greek mythology, pearls were believed to be the tears of the gods or the dewdrops that the goddess of love, Aphrodite, shook from her hair as she emerged from the sea. In Persian mythology, pearls were formed when a rainbow met the earth after a storm. and their imperfections were caused by thunder and lightning. In Hindu mythology, the god Krishna discovered the first pearl and gave it to his daughter on her wedding day. In Islamic tradition, pearls are mentioned in the Quran as one of the treasures of paradise, adorning the inhabitants of heaven. These stories reflect the universal fascination with pearls in the sense that they are not just beautiful objects, but gifts from the divine or the natural world. The economics of the pearl industry are complex and influenced by many factors, including supply, demand, fashion trends, and the health of oyster populations. The market for pearls is global, with production centers in Japan, China, Australia, French Polynesia, Indonesia, and other countries. Japan, once the dominant producer of cultured pearls, has seen its production decline in recent decades due to environmental changes and competition from other countries. China has become the world's largest producer of freshwater pearls, flooding the market with affordable pearls, but also raising concerns about quality control and environmental impact. Australia and French Polynesia produce high-quality South Sea and Tahitian pearls that command premium prices. The market is also influenced by consumer preferences, which can shift over time. In recent years, there has been growing interest in unique, non-traditional pearls, such as Baroque shapes and unusual colors, reflecting a broader trend toward individuality and authenticity in jewelry. The environmental impact of pearl farming is an important consideration. While pearl farming is generally less destructive than many forms of aquaculture, it still has environmental footprints. Pearl farms require clean water to thrive, so they have a vested interest in maintaining water quality. However, the concentration of oysters in a small area can lead to localized depletion of plankton and oxygen, and the waste product from the oysters can contribute to nutrient loading and algae blooms. Some pearl farms use antibiotics or other chemicals to control disease, which can have unintended effects on the surrounding ecosystem. The introduction of non-native oyster species for pearl farming can also pose risks to local biodiversity. Responsible pearl farming operations implement best practices to minimize these impacts, such as limiting stocking densities, monitoring water quality, and avoiding the use of harmful chemicals. The certification and traceability of pearls are emerging issues in the industry. As consumers become more concerned about the environmental and social impacts of their purchases, there is growing demand for pearls that are produced sustainably and ethically. Some pearl farms are pursuing certification through programs like the Marine Stewardship Council, or developing their own sustainability standards. Traceability systems, using techniques like DNA fingerprinting or blockchain technology, are being developed to allow consumers to verify the origin and production methods of their pearls. These efforts are still in the early stages, but they represent an important step toward greater transparency and accountability in the pearl industry. The future of pearls is likely to be shaped by several trends. Climate change poses significant challenges to pearl farming, as rising ocean temperatures, acidification, and extreme weather events can stress oyster populations and reduce nacre quality. Pearl farmers are adapting by selecting more resilient oyster strains, adjusting farming practices, and exploring new locations. Advances in technology, such as improved nucleation techniques and better monitoring systems, may increase production efficiency and pearl quality. Consumer preferences are also evolving, with growing interest in unique, artisanal pearls and in the stories behind them. The pearl industry is responding by emphasizing the craftsmanship, heritage, and individuality of pearls, positioning them not as mass-produced commodities, but as unique works of natural art. The science of pearls continues to advance, revealing new insights into the biology and chemistry of pearl formation. Researchers are studying the genes that control nacre production, hoping to understand how oysters regulate the deposition of calcium carbonate and the formation of aragonite platelets. They are investigating the role of proteins and other organic molecules in guiding crystal growth and creating the layered structure of nacre. They are exploring how environmental factors like temperature, pH, and food availability influence pearl quality. This research not only deepens our understanding of pearls, but also has potential applications in materials science, medicine, and other fields. The ability to control the growth of biominerals could lead to new ways of creating strong, lightweight materials or of repairing damaged bone and tissue. The connection between pearls and human culture is deep and enduring. Pearls have been treasured for thousands of years, not just for their beauty, but for what they represent: rarity, purity, perfection achieved through patience and response to adversity. They have adorned royalty and commoners, been given as gifts of love and tokens of esteem, been worn for protection and for display. They have inspired poetry, art, and mythology. They have been traded across continents, sparking exploration and commerce. They have been symbols of wealth and power, but also of humility and wisdom. This cultural richness is part of what makes pearls so compelling. They are not just objects, but carriers of meaning, links between the natural world and human experience. The experience of holding a pearl in your hand is a simple pleasure that connects you to this long history. The smooth, cool surface, the subtle weight, the soft glow of the luster. These sensations are the same that have been experienced by people across cultures and centuries. When you hold a pearl, you are holding the result of years of patient growth, of countless microscopic layers deposited one by one. You are holding a response to an irritant, a transformation of discomfort into beauty. You are holding a piece of the ocean, a fragment of the life that thrives in its depths. This connection to the natural world, to the slow processes that create beauty without haste, is part of the pearl's enduring appeal. The diversity of pearls is a reminder of the diversity of life itself. From the tiny seed pearls of freshwater mussels to the giant pearls of tridacna clams, from the silvery Akoya to the golden South Sea, from the black Tahitian to the pink conch, pearls come in an astonishing variety of forms. Each type of pearl is the product of a specific species of mollusk living in a specific environment, responding to specific conditions. This diversity is not random, but is shaped by evolution, by the adaptation of mollusks to their habitats, by the chemistry of the water and the biology of the organism. It is a diversity that reflects the complexity and creativity of the natural world, the endless variations on a theme that arise from simple rules applied in different contexts. The imperfections in pearls are part of their charm. A perfectly round, flawless pearl is beautiful, but there is also beauty in the Baroque pearl with its irregular shape, in the pearl with a small dimple or ridge, in the pearl with a subtle color variation. These imperfections are evidence of the pearl's natural origin, proof that it was formed by a living organism responding to its environment, not manufactured in a factory. They are reminders that perfection in nature is not about uniformity, but about authenticity, about being true to the process that created it. In a world that often values flawlessness and conformity, the imperfect pearl is a gentle rebellion, a celebration of individuality and organic beauty. The silence of pearl formation is profound. In the dark interior of the oyster, in the quiet depths of the ocean, the pearl grows without sound, without fanfare. The deposition of each layer of nacre is a chemical process, a precipitation of calcium carbonate from the surrounding fluid. There is no noise, no vibration, just the slow, steady accumulation of material. This silence is part of the pearl's mystery and appeal. It is a reminder that the most beautiful and enduring things are often created quietly, without announcement, through patient, repetitive effort. The pearl does not shout its presence. It simply exists, growing slowly, waiting to be discovered. The light that plays across a pearl's surface is a kind of conversation between the pearl and the world. The pearl receives light, and through the structure of its nacre, it transforms that light, sending it back out in a different form. The interference of light waves creates colors that shift and change as the pearl moves. The reflection from multiple layers creates luster, a soft glow that seems to come from within. This interaction with light is what gives the pearl its life, its sense of being more than just a static object. It is responsive, dynamic, changing with the angle of view and the quality of the light. This responsiveness is another aspect of the pearl's beauty, a reminder that beauty is not fixed, but is always in dialogue with its surroundings. The patience required to create a pearl is extraordinary by human standards. Most of us struggle to wait even a few minutes for a web page to load or a meal to cook. The idea of waiting years for something to form, layer by microscopic layer, is almost incomprehensible. Yet this is the pace of nature, the rhythm of growth and creation in the living world. Trees grow rings year by year. Coral reefs build up over centuries. Mountains rise over millions of years. The pearl is part of this slow, patient unfolding, a reminder that time in nature operates on a different scale than time in human affairs. There is something calming in this realization, something that invites us to slow down, to appreciate the value of gradual change, to recognize that the most worthwhile things often take time. The oyster's response to the irritant is automatic, instinctive, driven by biology rather than conscious choice. Yet there is something almost intentional about it, something that feels like care or craftsmanship. The oyster does not simply coat the irritant haphazardly. It creates a structure of remarkable precision and beauty, with layers of consistent thickness and carefully aligned crystals. This precision arises from the interplay of genetics, biochemistry, and physics, but the result is something that looks designed, purposeful. It is a reminder that nature, even without consciousness or intention, can create forms of astonishing elegance and complexity through the simple application of rules and constraints. The global distribution of pearl-producing mollusks reflects the history of the Earth's oceans. Pinctada species, which produce most saltwater pearls, are found in tropical and subtropical waters around the world, from the Persian Gulf to the South Pacific. Freshwater mussels of the family Unionidae are found in rivers and lakes across North America, Europe, and Asia. The distribution of these species is shaped by ocean currents, continental drift, and the evolution of marine ecosystems. Each population has adapted to its local environment, developing characteristics that influence the pearls it produces. This geographic diversity is part of what makes pearls so varied and interesting, and it connects the story of pearls to the larger story of life on Earth. The chemistry of seawater plays a crucial role in pearl formation. Seawater contains dissolved calcium and carbonate ions, which oysters extract and use to build their shells and pearls. The concentration of these ions varies with location, temperature, and other factors, influencing the rate and quality of nacre deposition. Seawater also contains trace elements like strontium, magnesium, and manganese, which can be incorporated into the nacre and affect its properties. The pH of seawater, which is slightly alkaline, is important for the precipitation of calcium carbonate. As the ocean absorbs more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, its pH is decreasing, a process known as ocean acidification. This acidification makes it harder for oysters to build their shells and pearls, posing a threat to both wild and farm populations. The temperature of the water affects the metabolic rate of the oyster and thus the rate of nacre deposition. Warmer water generally leads to faster growth, but if the temperature is too high, it can stress the oyster and reduce nacre quality. Cooler water slows growth, but can produce denser, higher quality nacre. Pearl farmers must balance these factors, timing their cultivation cycles to take advantage of optimal growing conditions. In some regions, oysters are moved to different locations at different times of year to optimize growth and quality. This management of the oyster's environment is one of the ways that pearl farming is both an art and a science, requiring knowledge, experience, and careful attention to detail. The salinity of the water is another important factor. Most pearl-producing oysters are adapted to specific salinity ranges, and changes in salinity can stress them or even kill them. Salinity can vary due to freshwater input from rivers, evaporation, rainfall, and ocean currents. Pearl farmers must monitor salinity and choose locations where it remains within the optimal range for their oysters. In some cases, oysters can adapt to gradual changes in salinity, but sudden shifts can be harmful. This sensitivity to salinity is one reason why pearl farming is concentrated in certain coastal areas where conditions are stable and favorable. The oxygen content of the water is critical for oyster health. Oysters, like all animals, need oxygen to survive and grow. They extract dissolved oxygen from the water through their gills. If oxygen levels drop too low, a condition known as hypoxia, oysters can become stressed, stop growing, or die. Hypoxia can be caused by algae blooms, which consume oxygen as they decay, or by stratification of the water column, which prevents oxygen-rich surface water from mixing with deeper water. Pearl farmers must ensure adequate water circulation and avoid overstocking, which can deplete oxygen levels. Monitoring oxygen levels is an important part of managing a pearl farm. The food available to oysters, primarily phytoplankton, determines how much energy they have for growth and nacre production. Phytoplankton abundance varies with season, nutrient availability, and water temperature. In productive waters with abundant phytoplankton, oysters grow faster and produce more nacre. In less productive waters, growth is slower. Pearl farmers often choose locations with naturally high productivity, or they may supplement the oyster's diet with cultured algae. The quality of the food also matters. Some species of phytoplankton are more nutritious than others. A diverse diet of high-quality phytoplankton supports healthy oyster growth and high-quality pearl production. The currents and water movement in a pearl farming area affect the delivery of food and oxygen to the oysters and the removal of waste products. Moderate currents are beneficial, bringing fresh, oxygenated water and carrying away metabolic waste. However, currents that are too strong can damage the oysters or their support structures. Calm, stagnant water can lead to oxygen depletion and the accumulation of waste. Pearl farmers choose locations with appropriate water movement and may use different types of culture systems depending on the local conditions. In areas with strong tides or currents, oysters may be suspended from long lines or rafts. In calmer waters, they may be placed in baskets or nets on the bottom. The depth at which oysters are cultured can influence pearl quality. Oysters near the surface experience more light and warmer temperatures, which can promote faster growth, but may also expose them to more stress from temperature fluctuations and UV radiation. Oysters at greater depths experience cooler, more stable temperatures, and less light. The optimal depth varies by species and location. Pearl farmers experiment with different depths to find the conditions that produce the best combination of growth rate and pearl quality. In some cases, oysters are moved to different depths at different stages of the cultivation cycle. The seasonality of pearl farming reflects the natural rhythms of the ocean. In temperate regions, oyster growth is fastest in spring and summer when water temperatures are warm and phytoplankton is abundant. Growth slows or stops in fall and winter when temperatures drop and food becomes scarce. In tropical regions, seasonality is less pronounced, but there may still be variations in temperature, rainfall, and food availability. Pearl farmers time their operations to align with these seasonal patterns, performing nucleation during periods when oysters are likely to recover quickly and produce high-quality nacre. Harvest is often timed to coincide with the end of a favorable growing season, maximizing the thickness and quality of the nacre. The life cycle of the oyster is intertwined with the life cycle of the pearl. Oysters typically live for several years, and they can produce multiple pearls over their lifetime in a cultured pearl operation. After a pearl is harvested, the oyster can be nucleated again and will begin forming a new pearl. Some oysters are used for multiple harvests, though the quality of the nacre may decline with each successive pearl. Eventually, the oyster's productivity decreases, and it is retired from pearl production. In the wild, oysters may live for many years, occasionally forming natural pearls, but most will never produce a pearl at all. The cultured pearl industry has made pearl production more predictable and efficient, but it still relies on the natural biology of the oyster. The genetics of oysters influence their ability to produce high-quality pearls. Some oyster families or strains are better at depositing smooth, lustrous nacre than others. Pearl farmers select oysters with desirable traits and breed them to create lines with improved pearl production. This selective breeding is similar to the breeding of crops or livestock for desirable characteristics. Over time, it can lead to significant improvements in pearl quality and yield. However, maintaining genetic diversity is also important to ensure that oyster populations remain resilient to disease and environmental change. Balancing selection for desirable traits with the preservation of genetic diversity is an ongoing challenge in pearl farming. The immune system of the oyster plays a role in pearl formation. When a foreign object enters the oyster, its immune system responds by sending cells to the site of the intrusion. These cells, along with epithelial cells from the mantle, form the pearl sac and begin depositing nacre. The oyster's immune response is thus a key part of the pearl formation process. If the immune system is compromised by disease or stress, the oyster may not be able to form a pearl, or the pearl may be of poor quality. Keeping oysters healthy and minimizing stress is essential for successful pearl production. The diseases that affect oysters can devastate pearl farms. Bacterial, viral, and parasitic infections can kill oysters or weaken them to the point where they cannot produce pearls. Some diseases spread rapidly through dense populations of oysters, causing mass mortality. Pearl farmers use various strategies to prevent and control disease, including maintaining good water quality, avoiding overstocking, quarantining new oysters, and in some cases using antibiotics or other treatments. Breeding oysters for disease resistance is another approach. Despite these efforts, disease remains a significant risk in pearl farming, and outbreaks can cause substantial economic losses. The predators of oysters are another challenge for pearl farmers. Fish, octopuses, crabs, starfish, and other marine animals feed on oysters, drilling through their shells or prying them open. In the wild, predation is a natural part of the ecosystem, but on a pearl farm, it represents a loss of valuable stock. Farmers use various methods to protect their oysters, such as enclosing them in protective cages, suspending them above the bottom where some predators are less active, and removing predators from the farming area. Despite these measures, some predation is inevitable, and it is factored into the economics of pearl farming. The biofouling of oyster shells and culture equipment is a constant issue. Algae, barnacles, tunicates, and other organisms attached to the oyster shells and the ropes, nets, and cages used in pearl farming. This biofouling can reduce water flow to the oysters, compete with them for food, and add weight to the culture structures. Farmers must regularly clean the oysters and equipment, a labor-intensive process. Some farms use anti-fouling coatings or treatments, though these must be carefully chosen to avoid harming the oysters or the environment. Biofouling is more of a problem in warm, productive waters where organisms grow quickly. The labor involved in pearl farming is considerable, from seeding oysters to monitoring their health, from cleaning equipment to harvesting pearls. Each step requires skill and attention. In many pearl farming regions, the work is done by hand, using techniques passed down through generations. The nucleation process, in particular, requires highly trained technicians who can perform the delicate operation quickly and accurately. Harvesting pearls is also skilled work, as the oyster must be opened carefully to avoid damaging the pearl. The labor-intensive nature of pearl farming is one reason why high-quality pearls remain expensive despite advances in technology and efficiency. The economic importance of pearl farming to coastal communities can be significant. In regions where pearl farming is a major industry, it provides employment, income, and opportunities for economic development. It can also incentivize the protection of marine environments, as clean water and healthy ecosystems are essential for successful pearl production. However, pearl farming also brings challenges, including the potential for environmental impacts, the vulnerability to market fluctuations, and the concentration of economic activity in a single industry. Diversification and sustainable practices are important for ensuring the long-term viability of pearl farming communities. The marketing of pearls is an art in itself. Pearls must be presented in a way that highlights their beauty and quality, appealing to consumers' desire for elegance, rarity, and authenticity. Marketing campaigns often emphasize the natural origin of pearls, their unique characteristics, and the craftsmanship involved in their cultivation and processing. Celebrity endorsements, fashion shows, and collaborations with designers help to keep pearls in the public eye. The rise of social media has created new opportunities for pearl marketing, allowing farmers and jewelers to reach consumers directly and tell the stories behind their pearls. Effective marketing is essential for maintaining demand and supporting the economic viability of the pearl industry. The emotional connection that people have with pearls is powerful. Pearls are often given as gifts to mark important occasions: birthdays, graduations, weddings, anniversaries. They are heirlooms, passed down from generation to generation, carrying memories and family history. They are symbols of love, commitment, and achievement. This emotional resonance is part of what makes pearls valuable, beyond their physical beauty and rarity. A pearl is not just an object. It is a carrier of meaning, a tangible link to moments and people that matter. This emotional dimension is something that cannot be quantified or manufactured, but it is central to the enduring appeal of pearls. The aesthetic of pearls is timeless. While fashions change and trends come and go, pearls remain a constant in the world of jewelry. They are classic and elegant, yet versatile enough to be worn in both traditional and contemporary styles. They complement any outfit, from casual to formal. They suit any age, from young women receiving their first pearls to older women who have worn them for decades. This timelessness is part of the pearl's magic. In a world of rapid change and fleeting trends, the pearl is a touchstone, a reminder of enduring beauty and grace. The quietness of pearls, their soft luster and gentle colors, makes them particularly suited to moments of reflection and rest. Unlike diamonds, which flash and sparkle with brilliance, pearls glow with a subdued, inner light. They do not demand attention, they invite it. They are contemplative rather than showy, understated rather than ostentatious. This quality makes them ideal for bedtime, for quiet moments, for times when the mind is settling and the day is drawing to a close. To think about pearls is to think about patience, about gradual transformation, about beauty that emerges slowly from the depths. It is a calming thought, a gentle thought, a thought that helps the mind to slow and rest. And so we arrive at the end of our journey through the world of pearls. We have explored the biology of oysters, the chemistry of nacre, the physics of light, the history of human fascination. We have seen how pearls form, layer by layer, in response to an irritant, through a process that is both simple and profoundly complex. We have learned about the diversity of pearls, the factors that influence their quality, the challenges and rewards of pearl farming. We have reflected on the cultural significance of pearls, their symbolism, their emotional resonance. And through it all, we have been reminded of the beauty and patience of the natural world, of the slow processes that create something extraordinary from something small. If you're still awake, if your mind is still wandering through these ideas, that is perfectly fine. There is no hurry, no need to rush towards sleep. The facts and images we have explored are here for you, a gentle landscape for your thoughts to move through. If you find yourself drifting, that is also fine. Let the ideas settle like layers of nacre, one on top of another, building something smooth and luminous in your mind. There are more stories like this, more journeys into the quiet corners of science and nature, if you wish to return another night. But for now, for this moment, you have everything you need. The pearl has been formed, the layers have been laid down, the light has been reflected and transformed. You can rest now, knowing that the world continues its slow, patient work, creating beauty in the darkness, building wonders layer by layer, without haste, without fanfare. The oyster does not sleep, but it rests in its way, filtering water, growing, responding to its environment. And you, too, can rest, letting go of the day, letting your thoughts slow and settle. The pearl is complete. The journey is finished, and the night is here, quiet and gentle, ready to hold you as you drift into sleep.